Hey everybody, happy Wednesday, or miserable Wednesday or mediocre Wednesday, or you have whatever Wednesday you're having. I don't get to tell you what kind of life to live. I do have some recommendations though. I rarely ever advertise my personal Patreon or my YouTube channel here, and that's probably a bit of a mistake. For a number of years, I didn't monetize my channel. I didn't advertise it because I was working for a nonprofit and I didn't want to appear that I was, leveraging stuff, but screw that. I got health care and it's gone up. I got bills to pay. So by all means, you go to patreon.com/atheistdebates and you can check out my Patreon account right there. And my YouTube account is youtube.com/sans deity. But I have two potential debates that we are negotiating details of right now, and we're working on possibly booking those. And this afternoon, I finished all 4 videos for the month of April from my Patreon project, although they will be released to the public in May. Everything I do like that gets released to everybody in the world for free, but you can get out a month early in this case. So I'll tell you the 4 videos I did, just kind of like a little miniature sales pitch, and I do this every month, but they're different. So the first video is called Gas Prices, EVs, and Fighting, and was based entirely on an online argument that I had last night and this morning. In fact, I canceled a different video that I had already prepped in order to get this one up first. It is not about gas prices, really. It's not about electric vehicles, but it's about honing our argumentation skills. And the guy that I was in an argument with was a friend of a friend. We didn't know each other. Now, after this video, which shows that a face-to-face conversation and videos are going to be more useful in a number of conversations than text. They're less limiting. You get to see somebody's face. You get to see their reaction. There's a lot there. You can tell what their tone is and when they're being in your face and when they're not. Anyway, the individual, even though this was starting to ramp up with that's some, oh, that's stupid and privileged and boom, 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 boom. After putting the video together, apologies were rendered both ways. Lessons were learned. And that individual and myself are now friends, and we have far more in common than we probably would have understood. But hopefully, I wanted to get it posted right away so that maybe others can learn the lesson that both of us learned. Video number 2 is called Prophecy Delivered, and a theist fan of the shows made some prophecies and had them printed out on a huge display, aluminum or plastic or something, in full color and sent it to us. And this video is Jimmy and myself in Jimmy's secret workshop opening this up and reacting to it from first blush. Like we didn't see it. We didn't know what was there. This is this guy's predictions. And so that's video number 2. Video number 3 is a verse-by-verse look at Genesis 17. I spend a lot more time than some folks would suspect studying the Bible, especially for somebody who's been an atheist for decades now. I've considered doing a full biblical commentary, although other people have done that, and I don't want to do it straight through. I definitely don't want to sit around and read the Begats again. Let's be honest. I may not have ever read I've read the entire Bible more than once, if you don't count the Begats, because you just kind of start skimming and your eyes glaze over, and it's like, and then Jeb begat so-and-so, and so-and-so begat so-and-so, and so-and-so begat, and it's like, wow. I might do a video just on the Begats, just to see if anybody ever watches it. But someday somebody may be able to put together a long video of me covering all the parts of the Bible that I felt like covering. And even today, in my studies of the Bible, I learned something new or relearned something that I'd forgotten. So it's good work. The 4th video is my favorite, and it's called Spirituality is Nonsense. And it calls out those who are advocating for spirituality, especially those advocating for non-religious spirituality or no-nonsense spirituality, and offering to certify people as certified non-religious spiritual guides or certified spiritual directors. Some of you will know some of the people I'm talking about, and while they aren't named in that video specifically, it's an open challenge to folks like Jim Palmer and Brett Hartley to defend the merits and proposed reality of their subject and methods, because if it's real, I'd like to support that. And if it's not, I'd love to expose it. And let's see if they're willing. Anyway, you can join and get early access to all the educational videos like that for a month, as well as a bunch of clips from the line on my patreon.com/atheist debates. And if you join my YouTube channel, youtube.com/sansdeity, you'll also get access to new live streams that I'm working on and a new show that I'm working on about teaching skepticism from the ground up. Also, by the way, you can like and subscribe right here on the line. We are closing in on 200,000 subscribers, and we're going to be doing fundraisers for Recovering from Religion and helping out a bunch of different organizations. And the more people we can get these videos in front of, the more good we can do. Tonight's guest, though, makes my attempts at Bible study appear pale in comparison. And so, as always, welcome Justin from Deconstruction Zone.
Hey, Matt, glad to join you tonight. And obviously, I'm a big fan of Bible study myself. Yeah. Can you tell me anything that you learned recently?
Oh, yeah. Here, I brought, it's, see, this is, let's see if I can find it here. No, and that, oh, maybe it was. Oh, wait, I'm not Russell Brand. I'm not accused of sexual assault and carry a Bible around as a prop. I actually learned in the study through Genesis, or relearned the kind of number of covenants that God may have made or tried to make with Abraham is way more than the one we finally hear about in Genesis 17. It's a fun list. But yeah, I don't know how many people saw it, but that Russell Brand thing is...
How many gold?
Chef's kiss. How are you?
The reason why you fell away, Matt, is because you forgot to split the bird in two and then walk between them when you made your deal with the Lord, and that he just abandoned you. Didn't not enough blood.
Well, the birds didn't get split in two. It was everything else that got split in two, right? So the 3-year-old ram and goat and heifer, they got split in two, but I thought the birds didn't.
That's probably the case, yeah.
And then there was some kind of fire. And it's weird. It's weird blood magic stuff and an altar. And then he comes. I pointed out in the video, spoiler alert for everybody who ends up watching my Genesis 17 video, my favorite moment, I think, is I was noting, can you imagine being one of Abraham's workers? And he comes down and says, hey, guys, God just told me we've got a new covenant. And so today, whip your dicks out. We're going to get, and then circumcises everybody, circumcises Ishmael himself, everybody. What kind of cray is that?
Yeah, and they don't have a say in it. So even the servants in the household have to be circumcised. Like, not only did they not sign up probably to be slaves, they were probably purchased against their will. Now they got to get their tips cut. Holy smokes.
And you made a great point while we were talking before, so go ahead and hit that one.
Oh, yeah. Well, the covenant ceremony is really interesting because remember, this is like all of the descendants of Abraham this covenant is supposed to be with, but it's technically only half of the descendants of Abraham because the women weren't part of the covenant. It's only for men, right? So women in the covenant are really kind of an afterthought. And even in the new covenant, they're somewhat of an afterthought. Even in Corinthians, remember, it talks about how you can even like save your spouse if you're married to an unbeliever. So there's always some kind of a loophole if you're married to the right person. It says women would be saved in Timothy through childbirth. And it's just amazing how much of an afterthought women are with this particular God.
Yeah, across the board. I did an entire video about the worth of women and how, generally speaking, and I made a comment on it in today's video on Genesis 17, because throughout most of the Bible, women aren't named. They're so-and-so's wife, so-and-so's, whatever. There are several exceptions, and Sarah, of course, gets named twice because God wants to rename her, which is really strange. But anyway, this is a live call-in show, and before I got one announcement to make before we get to the actual calls, and that is from the American Empathy Project. The American Empathy Project is a micro-grant mutual aid program of the American and Humanist Association. Oops, I had the wrong thing pinned. There we go. The American Humanist Association. Selected grantees have received $1,000 from the AHA for their chosen project, along with planning support and additional project resources. Why do we need this? We're living through a crisis of cruelty with an administration that threatens our neighbors' safety, leaves kids hungry, diminishes our collective humanity, and seeks to divide us with fear and hate. But we won't let them win. There's hope in each other and in ourselves, and we need you to be a leader, and AHA is here to help. Organizers will be bringing their communities together across the country on May 2nd, 2026, to fund community-wide service projects such as food drives, clothes drives for trans youth, supply drives for immigrant families, community environmental cleanup, and more. Go to AmericanEmpathyProject.org to see what events are happening near you. When I mentioned liking and subscribing to the line, we work with RFR, we're doing fundraisers. We're really happy to be able to advertise this for the American Humanist Association, because if there's anything that we are lacking more than truth in this world is empathy. And so doing some good for people, showing humanism in action, humanism at work, is about as good as it's more important than me arguing with whoever calls on the phone today, almost certainly, unless they're calling to argue that empathy isn't needed and we shouldn't be helping people, in which case, then it's pretty important. You can call us 720-619-2288, or you can use the link below this video to call in through Call-In Studio. And any theist calling in is going to go straight to the head of the queue. What have you been up to, Justin, while we wait on the callers to pour in?
Not too much, although I've been jealous of all the animals you've got over at your place. So I'm getting 2 parrots actually recently.
What kind?
Yeah, they assigned 2 ringneck parrots. My girlfriend and I both picked out 2 of them, and we're still picking out names. It's a lot of pressure to get names for something that lives that long, but we're not going to have a zoo as large as yours, though.
Well, ours got a little bit smaller. For those who don't know, Arden and I own Epic Loot Exotics, and we keep and breed 20 species of snakes and 10 species of lizards, give or take. And we went to the Herps Belton Expo this weekend, and I think we sold like 8 snakes and a gecko. But I also traded for a snake, and then I also bought a snake because it's an addiction, and let's stop pretending that it's actually a business. This is an obsession and hobby with us, but we're really excited. As a matter of fact, Arden has the new snake in her office behind her, so she can see it all the time. It is our first in this species, and that's Morelia viridis, or the green tree python. They are gorgeous, and Aaron got bit.
Oh no!
Oh no, it was great. We were pretty sure somebody was going to get bit, because they like to be like on branches. They're not the most handleable snakes ever. You can kind of tame some of them down, but they're notorious for, like, they're probably going to chomp you at some point. They are not what I would recommend as a pet for most people. But it was in a big deli cup, and Aaron came down to the expo, and I was like, yeah, I'm probably going to get bit trying to get him out later. And I was like, I should let Aaron get bit first. And he was like, yeah. And of course,
anyone who could take a bite, it'd be Aaron.
They recorded the whole thing. It was absolutely hilarious. They did not get the bite, though. They recorded him handling the green tree, and the green tree was incredibly frenetic and flailing around. And I was about to say, hey, let's put it back. I'm not trying to stress this animal out. This is not the right circumstance to handle it. And when Aaron went to put it back in the deli cup, it chomped him. There was some bleeding, but it was, he said it didn't hurt all that much, which means it probably would have hurt me pretty well. But, Aaron's tougher than I am.
Did you find that when you moved from theism to atheism, you had more empathy for animal and animal welfare? Because I felt like that was a huge transition for me, and I'm still shocked. Like, I talked to a theist this last week. In order to justify the biblical view and the creation of animals, the way they eat each other and whatnot, they basically had to come down to this idea that animals don't deserve any comfort or empathy. And I asked him, would you light a dog on fire? And would it be wrong if you did? He was, well, it wouldn't be wrong. I was like, it's not wrong to light a living dog on fire. And that's kind of, I think, where Christianity leads you, is animals have no consideration.
Yeah, I know for a fact that. So I worried that I was weird and lacking in empathy in general. And I remember I've talked about this before. I remember having a conversation with my mom when my grandfather died, because I was like, I'm not as sad as everybody else is. I mean, I'm going to miss my grandfather, but he was suffering, and I'm glad that he's no longer suffering. He was just wasting away, and so the death itself didn't hit me as hard, and I wasn't crying and mourning. And my mom, being sweet, was like, everybody grieves in their own way and stuff, and you've missed him for a number of years, so it's probably not a big deal. But what I did definitely, I discovered that um, my understanding and the implementation, I guess, or the activation of my empathy increased across the board. Like there were people who once upon a time my family would have been, you know, they are lesser or something. And that went away when I started discovering humanism and realizing, I was lied to about, my special place with God. But I hadn't thought of it until you mentioned it. My view on animals definitely changed. And it became, like my dad, this is not fault to him. This is a money thing. No pet was ever going to a vet. It's a dog. It's, we didn't have cats, but it's a dog. If it gets hurt really bad, whatever, you suffer through it, you deal with it at home, or you're Christy Nomad. And we lived out on a farm, or surrounded by ranchers and stuff like that. And death is an actual part of life that you get used to. Like right now, along with everything else, I raise rodents, and some of they're growing up to be feeders for the reptiles. That's just the way nature is. But I don't like euthanizing them. I don't like freezing them. I don't like feeding them. I don't, and it doesn't freak me out, but it's an empathy thing. And it's a weird mix to get used to. There's a dead rodent every couple of days. I mean, we just have so many when you're producing on that scale. Somebody's going to die. One of the rodents is going to kill another one. One of them's going to be unhealthy or old. And despite realizing that death is the last part of life and not being weirded out by it as much as I used to, I'm a lot more empathetic and compassionate to the animals we have than I ever would have been, in the old days. So thanks for bringing that up. It's something I probably don't talk about or think about all that much.
I think we might have some callers in queue already.
We do. In fact, if you're ready, we're going to start with Mark calling from New York. Pronouns are he, him. Mark has a question, where I'm going to reject the premise, but I'm going to wait. Hey, Mark, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm a long-time listener, but second-time caller. So yeah, the position is you can't reason somebody out of a moral position they didn't reason themselves into. I know you already reject that, but I'm going to give a little bit of a backstory. This is from
Sure.
lectures and books by Robert Sapolsky. He talks about how parts of our brain, specifically the limbic system, activates before we make we consciously think about a moral position. So first we see how it feels, and then after the fact we make a reasoned argument about why that's right. So we'll feel that it's wrong to sleep with your mother, and then after the fact we'll say, well, this is why it's wrong to sleep with your mother.
Hey. And it's your contention that means they weren't reasoned into the position, because I don't know any position, moral or otherwise, where you can hold a position that you weren't reasoned into. Every position I hold is the result of reasoning. It's just often flawed reasoning. And so an emotional appeal is just flawed reasoning. It feels icky. And then there's some process where it goes from this feels icky to I have now become convinced this is morally wrong. The process of convincing you is the reasoning.
Yeah, but if that reasoning is just because your anterior cingulate was more exposed to bad smells, like that's something he talks about additionally, is how parts of our brain have it co-opted for multiple functions. So the part of our brain that reacts to gustatory disgust, or like, bad food, bad smells, bad food, stuff like that, is the same part that activates when we see social things that are out of the norm. So you could say, like, oh, that's wrong because I can feel that in my chest, or like the famous Supreme Court case of pornography.
You
I know it when I see
you
it.
literally called it reasoning and then said that's wrong because I feel this. That is literally reasoning. If you point out those errors in thinking, the emotional appeals, that's literally an emotional appeal fallacy. If you point out those errors in thinking, people can change their mind. So what people like to say is you can't be reasoned out of a position you weren't reasoned into. And my position is you were reasoned into every position. And I'm pretty sure that the only thing that is ever going to change someone's position is reasoning. And so you fix flawed reasoning with better reasoning.
Maybe that is the issue that I'm hearing, because I listen to both of you, and I see both sides of the argument of where you're getting at, where, yeah, of course it was bad reasoning, but you used reasoning to get there. But I also see Robert Sapolsky's side of the argument, where he's saying you can give as much data as you want about how, if you think homosexuality is wrong or something, about, you can give as much reasoning as you want, but if that doesn't, it won't overcome their emotional appeal. So you're saying, well, stop trying to appeal to their emotion?
Yeah, I think Sapolsky is incredibly wrong if that's what he said, because what he's complaining about is a condition within humans that we recognize, which is one of those things is once somebody's made a public profession of a position, they're less likely to change their mind, even in the face of evidence to the contrary. That we know. But we're talking about what ought to convince people and what is the only or best way to convince people to change their mind. And so saying people stubbornly stick to whatever doesn't mean they're immune to reasoning. It just means that you need to reason in a slightly different way. Instead of going directly at that subject, make a directly and almost digital, but it's still an analogous argument, and show the reasoning steps that get them to a different conclusion, and show that their reasoning process leads to a conflict. And once you get that sort of reductio ad absurdum, then there are some people who may never change their mind, and those people are just willingly irrational, but there are other people who will change their mind. Saying that there's some people who will never change their mind isn't a statement about all of them. And it's definitely not a statement about reasoning or the reasoning process. It's about human psychology.
I like that. I do like, thank you for that response.
Cool. Listen to me more than Sapolsky and you'll do better. I'm kidding. Sorry, Robert.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe I just need to see more of where maybe I'm just misunderstanding his bigger picture or something like that. But do you think that
Sapolsky's ever going to see me say
we're just as good in our moral reasoning as we are in our moral actions? Like, it's easier for us to think about something and say that, oh, of course I do this, rather than in reality where what we actually do?
One more time.
Do you think that we're better at theorizing or thinking about our moral reasoning than our moral actions? Or to put it another way, are we more consistent in our theorizing about morals than we are in our actual moral actions?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it. I think we are prone to being impulsive in our actions, and we are prone to rationalizing after the fact and prior to. So I don't know that I could say, oh, we're better at this than we are. I don't have the information to say we're better at one than the other. I think we're decent at both, but we've got similar errors in both. What do you think, Justin?
I think even if there's something that you feel like is an emotional appeal to something, even the emotion that you have around that has to do with something in your environment that you learned growing up, like something affected you, and now as an older person, like you feel a feeling of disgust, whereas you might not have if you had a different upbringing, right? So even though it might feel like some moral decisions are happening out of feelings, the reality is at some point there was an actual thought process that got you there, something in your upbringing. And I would say there's a lot of things that like I carried as a child into my adulthood, just kind of as a means of environmental programming that when I became older, I had to think rationally about them. That, oh, actually, I've just been doing this instinctually. I've been believing something instinctually. And now that I have the capacity to reason, I can see where my feelings are actually wrong about this thing. And I actually need to move past it, right? So I get it. There's a lot of people for sure that are oriented towards following their feelings or their gut. But that's something that your subconscious has already kind of done for you. It already laid the groundwork. If you're intentional about it and you put the work in, you can actually get yourself to a point where you've convinced yourself that those aren't the right feelings to have in those situations. And you can actually even change the way your feelings, cause your behavior to happen next time you arrive in that situation. Again, the brain's very, very powerful. That's why we have so many studies showing that just believing in something, even if it's not like taking a sugar pill, can literally give you better performance in the gym if you think that whatever it is going to give you better performance in the gym. The brain's very powerful.
I agree with you. My issue is like, yes, after being convinced, you become habitualized, and then after the fact, you can go, okay, well, let me reason about this. Maybe that wasn't right, and it was just my crappy parents that taught me that. But I have a different way of looking at it. Like, we can be perfect in our moral reasoning with like utilitarianism, but then when we're faced with a situation where it's like, but I have to kill my mother to save 5 people, not a random stranger, or I have to push somebody and not pull a lever, it messes with our like gut feeling. Oh, that feels really wrong. And like, I don't know how I would ever reason myself out of that situation where, oh, I could save 5 people, but I have to kill my mother. Like, I don't know how I could bridge that gap to get over that emotional hurdle to do the right thing, which would be to save 5 people.
I'm not convinced of what scenario I would find that it's okay to kill one person to save 5, whether it's my mom or not. I mean, I know you're just trying to give an example and show how, we care more about those close to us and that can fundamentally change it. I mean, there's people I'd probably, in the right scenario, I'm sure there's people I would advocate for their death for free, even if it didn't save any, but I'd rather not. And that's what, that's kind of what humanism is correcting. But like in the trolley problem things, when you talk about which position is more moral, like it's inevitable, we're going to throw the switch and send it down this track and kill one person instead of 5. There are people who are like, no, that's an action I took. And I think this is a little bit of potentially a naturalistic fallacy, but they change the perspective of this if they're going to have to take an action. Like they consider an action that causes this to be worse than an inaction that does not prevent it. And I think they're difficult problems. I don't think I've ever heard any way of doing math with lives that I find particularly useful. They're kind of good thought experiments, but I'm pretty confident. Well, no, I guess I'm not pretty confident. Yeah, difficult situations, and we are flawed, and we are going to, like I treat my mom different than a random caller to the show most of the time. On occasion, I have treated my mom exactly like a random caller to the show. And when she acts like a caller to the show, and we're going to just do that, and that's why we don't argue about this stuff anymore. So I know that we do that. I don't know how that comes down on the moral action versus moral reasoning, because the only thing that we're actually discussing right now is moral reasoning about a hypothetical moral action. And that means all of this just lives in our brain. What you'll do in the moment, I don't know, until you're tested.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from, and I agree with you a lot. Besides like the you said you couldn't like do calculations with lives. It's the same thing with like, oh, you see a child drowning who's 10 feet in front of you, but you're going to have to ruin your $500 shoes. Of course you save the child, but there's a child halfway across the world who, if you gave them $500, they would live out the rest of their life, but you don't do that. So the distance and proximity to somebody affects your moral actions, but not your moral reasoning. My moral reasoning would be, of course I'd give $500 to somebody across the world, but I don't. But if there was somebody right in front of me, I would give them $500.
That example, like most of them, is incredibly flawed. Because if there's a kid drowning right here, there is an immediate need and a limited pool to select from of who's available to potentially jump in. If you and I are both standing there and you're barefoot and a better swimmer, and I'm wearing $500 shoes, your ass should be the one jumping in, I would argue, rather than waiting for my old, decrepit, slow swimming ass to take off my shoes or ruin them to go in and save her. That is ultimately a completely different scenario, not just in the sense that it's distance, because let's imagine that in the pool, there is someone who's drowning, and sitting next to the pool is a child that is starving. Those two needs are not as immediate. They're not of equal immediacy. And so this example of, oh, you could send $500. Well, how do I know where to send it, how to send it, what good it's going to do there? It is, I think, a way to design a thought experiment wrong, because you're not comparing equivalent things. You're comparing your two things and saying they're comparable in order to expose that we think about them differently. But I would argue that the kid that's starving halfway around the world that, can eat for a long time on the $500 I send is a different scenario. And it's a different impact on me directly. Like, that $500, I may not have it, but I got the shoes. And so, okay, well, we'll just say you have it. Yes, but if that $500 is my last $500 that I need to keep my family from becoming homeless, that's different from the shoes too. So the thought experiments are great to try to, Dan Dennett calls them like intuition pumps, that they exist in part, or they're useful to us because they train us maybe so that we are better at dealing with these situations when they arrive. But they're all going to be flawed. I don't know Sapolsky particularly well. I'll be honest. I haven't, I've read bits and pieces of stuff from him. I've never read a book or a paper by him directly. And I don't think I know I've seen one video, because somebody recommended it to me. So I don't know all of his positions. I'd be very surprised if he and I actually disagreed. I think what's likely happening is something akin to what happened between me and Joseph Schmidt. We had a conversation about whether claims are evidence, because ultimately we agreed that what I was saying was correct, and that what he's doing is expanding the definition of evidence to be like some second tier evidence. And I would think that maybe the difference between what I'm saying and what Sapolsky is advocating is that I think he would agree this is reasoning, but he's not necessarily, he's like dismissing flawed reasoning. He's saying, good reasoning may not always impact flawed reasoning or correct flawed reasoning. And I would agree that while I think ideally it should, we know that it doesn't. And that's about human nature and psychology.
I think you're right. I think that you do probably are on the same page. He's probably using that turn of phrase of, you can't reason somebody out of a position they haven't reasoned themselves into to broaden a bigger point. Because this is in the context of either his book Behave or his lecture series where he's, painting a broad brush and trying to get the broad strokes instead of. So I think you're right. I think you're both on the same page. I'd like to thank you for your time, and I appreciate that. Unless you have any more questions for me.
Nope, I'm good. Thanks, Mark. If you talk to Sapolsky at any point, tell him I said hi.
All right. I don't know if I'll get the opportunity to, but I would love it. All right.
Yeah,
have a great night,
that was
guys.
part of the joke. Because thanks. I doubt he'll be seeing this. I doubt he and I don't know. Who knows? I mean, we might have some opportunity to interact. I've interacted with people that I never thought that I would be interacting with. A number of them have been a massive disappointment. So if another one turns out to be another massive disappointment, the track record's pretty good.
Sapolsky's a pretty cool dude. I watched his lectures back when they were first put on iTunes University.
Mm-hmm.
And I suspect that the way that it was phrased might have been a little bit hyperbolic. He does that sometimes when he speaks. So it might be more of a generic phrase than like a hyper literal phrase.
It could be. And it could also be that there's subtleties. I mean, like when Joseph and I sat down, we had a phone call, and I'm not going to go through all the details, but the last video I put up was one that I sent him in advance. And it was basically that, and it hasn't gotten very many views, which I found incredibly disappointing because I think it's important. And that is that claims are, in programming terms, like pointers to evidence. They don't contain the actual evidence, but they're pointing you to the evidence. If there's a study and there's 38 data points that could each bump your confidence up 1%, the most your confidence should go up from those data points is 38%. It doesn't go up 39% because you package those together in a study. And that's kind of what I was saying, which, he agreed with. It was just, there's something about the fact that somebody claims something, which is a second order evidence. And I'm like, I don't view that as evidence. Otherwise, if you did, then the accumulation of each of those anecdotal assertions would make you 5,000% confident in whatever the claim is in no time.
I think it's difficult too because we've got claims for everything: UFO abductions, Bigfoot, and so I get why some people might say that like, claims are evidence, but I think it's a nuanced position that probably needs to be discussed. I don't think it's going to get very far as like just using blanket statements one way or the other. I think it's a difficult thing.
Yep. And I think what you just mentioned reminded me that, one of the problems of this, of being loose with what we're going to count as evidence and what we are going to count as something that should ideally boost our confidence in a claim, is it leads to somebody saying, hey, look, there's 20,000 people that have said this. They can't all be wrong. Yes, as a matter of fact, they can. And is the case for example, for every religion that isn't true, or every experience that has been misunderstood. I mean, you can just go back to McKay's Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. There's a book, 19th century, that talks about that. This is nothing new. It's just that the world in general and the United States in particular is getting stupider at a rather shocking pace.
Idiocracy was a prophecy.
And I was so mad the first time somebody told me that. I was like, no, that movie is too stupid to ever actually be real. And while I think we would destroy ourselves before we would quite get to it. It's definitely prescient, and that pisses me off. All right. We have more callers, so let's go. Dayton is calling from Nebraska. Pronouns are him. An atheist. It's not a religion question. It's a MAGA one. Hey, Dayton, how are you?
Hi, Matt, Justin.
Am I pronouncing it right?
How are you guys doing?
Am I pronouncing that right?
Dayton.
Dayton. Okay. It's spelled a
Kinda
little
like Ohio.
differently.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi. Like I said, it's not a religion question. So if you're not interested, just holla at your boy, and I will fuck right off. Otherwise,
No, we're good.
Sorry.
No, I said no, we're good. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm a 22-year-old Afro-American man in Nebraska, and I'm fairly far left. I'm curious as to know at least kind of what your guys' prescriptions would be on how do we fix where we're at now. Obviously, we got a few years to go until we can start making the right movements in any sort of political sense, majorly. But I mean, I've been emailing my representatives. I despise most of them. I've been trying to, I've been going out to rallies. I've been trying to help keep people safe in my environment. But it just doesn't it ever make you feel downtrodden, like you can't
Every
do enough?
second of every day.
How do we what do we do from here, right? Like, I know that that it can't always be this way, and you always, everything in the news happening, one thing after the other. It doesn't seem like it's changing more often than not. And I just, like, how do we go forward from here? And then how do we keep this from happening again? Because there are so many people, even in my own city, Omaha, which is a relatively blue city, a ton of people that still are okay with this, and they are still sort of not perpetrating the word that I'm looking for. They're still espousing the same rhetoric that has been disproven and has been sort of dissuaded time and time again. But they're still doing it. Nothing's changing.
Justin, do you have thoughts on fixing the world?
I do actually have some thoughts. I think it's easy to get discouraged when you're in the middle of it, but they say like the arc of justice is long and actually it has a destination. I would say this. I had a really good civics teacher when I was in high school, and she described the political climate kind of like this. If you have an old school clock with a pendulum, it swings one way and then back the other way. But it doesn't just do that. Actually, it moves on a long arc, swinging back and forth. And when you're just in that little swing and you're not part of that larger arc, it's hard to feel that larger arc. It feels like you're just in whatever zone that pendulum swing is at, because that's the shorter time period. But like we can never give up, because we're the reason why the pendulum swings back. If we stop fighting for what's right, for what is good and what's just, then that pendulum gets stuck. And that's where we really screw up. We can mess up our long-term arc. So while it is really depressing to watch some of the stuff that's happening, if we lose the fight, if we give up, if we lose the motivation to fight, we make the world a worse place for the future. So my only advice is to never get discouraged, because even just a group of people can change a whole lot. They can change the conversation. So, again, I get it. Some people are prone to different personality types. My personality type is to fight.
Absolutely. And I'm the same way. I'm definitely one of those I ain't hear no bell type of guys. But how do we stop something like this from happening again? If it was, I thought that 2016, now granted, I'm only 22, so I couldn't vote in 2016, and I was just on the cusp of being able to vote in 2020, but I couldn't quite then either. I could have swore that after 2020, after everything that we saw in 2020, that would be it, that nobody thought Donald Trump was coming back. And once he did, everybody hopped on the ship. I don't. On top of that, the 24 election, I voted Kamala. Why were there so many people that weren't okay with voting for the brown woman?
Well, I think exactly the same reason I would tell you why some of them didn't want to vote for her, because we still have as a country, we still have a lot of demons to overcome in terms of who we would want to represent us. And the reality is the loudest group in America is white men. And it's just like when I was in training to be a minister, they tell you get a lot of data on demographics. And what you'll find is that, like, in a pastor, the people that end up going to your church are always going to be roughly, for the most part, the same skin tone as you, around the same age as you, and around the same social network as you. It won't be exact, but it's a rough sketch of what that looks like, because people like leaders that they feel will represent them. And so there's a lot of like internalized bias that people might not even be aware of yet. Obviously, we know there's external biases that people are actually very loud about, but even like roughly normal people have these internal biases, and a lot of them just aren't ready for a candidate that doesn't look like them, sound like them, or act like them. And that's one of those hurdles that we have to overcome. And some countries have already gotten there. We're still learning. And so I get it's frustrating because you're like, it feels like we're so close, but then we fall apart at the end. But you just have to keep fighting because we'll take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Don't get discouraged when you take 1 step back. You got to fight, get 2 more steps forward.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And that's I've been my whole family has been trying. What steps can we take to prevent seeing something like this? Or I suppose, what can I do within my community? How can I don't even necessarily know if I can reach through to some of the older, generally older people who are all for the sort of rightward swing in the country, seeing as how I'm in a very red state.
Do you like data? So I'll give you one piece of practical advice that has worked for me. Back before I was doing religious debates, I spent a lot of time debating politics. And the one thing, if there's one thing that I ever did that would actually help persuade people, is showing them lots and lots of data. When confronted with data, they're not likely to just agree with you. But I feel like that's the thing that changes people's minds the most. I had an aunt who was the only Democrat in my family for a long time. And I asked her when I was a young Christian, why is that? Why would you vote for the Democrats given, if you're not a real Christian, if you're Democrat, right? I thought. And then she was really well educated in this area, and she actually worked for the federal government at one point. And she goes, actually, it was the data that got me here. She started walking me through the data, and I was like, oh man, you're right. Like, just voting on these principles, these things that I thought were important are enough. You actually have to look at the data and the outcomes and what actually works. And if you get really good at the data and the information and being able to present them to people, well, you're not going to convince everybody, but there are a certain number of people that do care about the facts on the ground. And if you have a good collection of data to share with them, you'll be able to convince at least some people that, the facts on the ground don't support, the right-wing position.
I'm
okay.
You were asking, why are so many people unwilling to vote for a brown woman? And it's because she's brown, and it's because she's a woman. And I don't say that just to be glib and like, here's the obvious. There's a lot of people who are really pissed off that we had a black president. We have a lot of things that we can fix, and a lot of things that are going to take a long time to fix, and some things that need to be fixed a little more quickly. We're not going to fix racism in the next couple of months or years. It is lingering. Every bit of their language about DEI is just coded. Hey, we don't want and we don't trust that whatever category of brown folks or whatever category of folks in general, we don't trust that they're qualified and that they're just getting the job because they shouldn't have. And it's going to be crushing when they realize that how many of them were incredibly overqualified compared to the brain dead, inept buffoons currently running absolutely everything. This is like the fascist frat party running our government right now. And there's a lot of stuff we can do. I am a fan of there's a term for it, but where you comply to the letter, essentially, in order to use their own ridiculousness against them. There's a bunch of things that we can do. Obviously, contact your reps, vote, spread the word. And I would also add, call out AI slop, call out misinformation posted, call out lies that are being posted. demand consequences and demand justice. We have literally people that we know are guilty. Trump is a rapist. The judge said so. 86-47. Go ahead, indict me now before you fill your diaper, you little rapist. Bring it on. But as much as I hate to say it, things may be leading in some regard. We predicted the potential of civil war. We predicted the potential of world war. I think that I'm not in favor of violence as a general solution to anything, but I am in favor of revolution. And if it ends up being that you have to take actions, not individually, not unilaterally, but as a group, people are worth protecting and rights are worth protecting. And what the Constitution is supposed to be is worth protecting. We have a guy, and the only reason I'm not going to say the name right now is because I haven't talked to Jimmy about it, but a guy called into one of the shows on the line last night. I'm not going to give you the number or the name, but he called in from the phone number of his business. So if you Google the number that he called us from, it is his business number. And there's a picture of him with his name, and there's his business. And I noticed when I went to the business that it had a 5-star review rating on Google with only 5 reviews. So I left a new review last night. I left a 1-star review on Google that said there's a person who calls into our YouTube show from this number and spams racist comments, including the N-word, which means it's the owner or an employee. 1-star racist. And then I went to the Better Business Bureau and I gave him a 1-star rating at the Better Business Bureau too. And because I'm not a little cowardly bitch like he is, I sent him an email to his business email congratulating him on his 1-star reviews and said, I signed my name, and included the picture of him in his business hat. Now, I suppose there's tech somewhere where somebody could spoof a number if they really wanted to, but I'm pretty confident that it's malicious compliance. Thank you to chat. I'm pretty confident that while he will have to do some work and he may be able to get the reviews taken down, he now knows how stupid he was, because I know his name, I know his business. He called from that number, and was just repeating the N-word over and over and over and over and over again. I fucking hate bigots with the fury of 1,000 suns. And when he gets those reviews taken down, I've kept screenshots and his number and his business name, and I might go post those every single time he gets them taken down. Is that wrong? I no longer give a fuck. You shouldn't have called me from your business account. If you're proud enough to give us your actual name and you're proud enough to call from your business account, I am proud enough that I will do everything in my power to shut you down legally.
Yeah, I can respect that. Yeah, no, if you're proud enough to be that flagrant with your beliefs, you better be proud enough to hold this L when you receive it.
Yep.
And that was, you did kind of touch on another question that I was going to ask there, is like the people. I mean, we can't just let them be, because we've done that and it didn't work. We're here now. Violence is not something that I ever want to have to happen.
Agreed.
But if it does, then I mean, there's really nothing I can do other than prep myself for it.
I got in a fight with a friend of mine. Hey, I guess I should say former friend. We don't talk anymore. Because when Richard Spencer, the famous Nazi, got punched on the street, he and a bunch of other people celebrated it. And I did not. I pointed out that Richard Spencer was live on television and was being actively racist, but doing it in a way where it was like, hey, I'm not talking about white supremacy. I'm talking about white separatism. You know, we don't hate. We just want to live separately from those people. And in the midst of it, somebody walked up and punched him in the face. And all that did was akin to the Streisand effect, draw way more attention and a little bit of sympathy, perhaps, for Spencer. If I was Richard Spencer and I wanted to get attention other than being on the news, one of the smartest things I could have done is to pay someone to come up and punch me in the face for attention. And if it's a smart thing for him to pay to have somebody do it, it's stupid as fuck for us to do it for free. I get the cathartic aspect of it. I even can understand arguments that this guy probably deserves it, and that you're probably never gonna reach him through reasoning and everything else because he's so public about his racism. But I was opposed to it, and this former friend of mine wasn't. And we haven't spoken in years over this because he literally wrote a book about Nazi punching. And the world has changed since then. And while I still would not advocate for punching Richard Spencer in that scenario, there are other people in different scenarios that I'm absolutely not opposed to punching. I'm too weak to do it myself. So it seems like a bitch move to suggest somebody else should do it for me. But the world is changing. And that's the point I'm getting to. The world is changing and the fascists are winning. So what I like to advocate is call things out. If you stay on social media and you see people sharing lies, especially people on your own side, call them out, because everyone should be expected to defend their position and to defend it fairly. And this is the thing that I talked about in video number 1 today, from the gas prices, electric vehicles, etc. Is somebody had made a comment of basically like, I've been an electric vehicle driver for years. I don't understand why people are still buying new gasoline cars. And I'm like, that's pretty fucking stupid. To be like, I don't know why people are buying the most popular, most available, most functional, most affordable, most comfortable, most familiar. That's like saying, I don't know why people are still going to fast food. You can drive to the grocery store, you can buy everything, you can take it home and make it yourself, and it will be healthier and cheaper in the long run. Yeah, but we're lazy. And that doesn't even include the fact that there is an active campaign of lies and misinformation to shut down electric vehicles and to make them not as accessible. I mean, I had a buddy come visit me, was going to drive down from Dallas, and decided not to drive his electric vehicle because he wasn't sure when or where he could recharge. You don't have that problem. There's 50 gas stations just on the highway alone without even going a mile off the highway between me and, I don't know, Waco, probably. I mean, a couple hours north. And so I was pointing this out, and the fact that, like, I have a pickup truck. I'm gonna release all the information from all 4 videos right now. So you guys have to go join the Patreon, just so that I get my money's worth out of it. But I have a pickup truck because I do some wood shop work in my garage, but mainly because I have to haul an entire magic show state to state and haul reptiles around to expos. There is no electric vehicle that is affordable and functional for what I need. Oh, somebody in chats. Never mind. I won't address it. But anyway, Dayton, yes, call stuff out. Call out the misinformation. Expect people to defend their points and work together to get the people who are on our side of an issue to be better at arguing, better at presenting data. And when the data, when they're not able to actually present data, to at least be able to ask the questions of, oh, hang on, you voted for Trump, let's say, because no new wars and economy. Well, the economy is tanked. Gas is the highest it's been in over 4 years. And we're in wars all over the back. And despite his claim of stopping 8, 9, 10, 11, 5,000 wars, he hasn't. So how do you feel about that vote now? And isn't this what Kamala said would happen? Isn't this what a lot of us said would happen? There's going to be cognitive dissonance. It is not going to be easy. And I don't want to sound like a lunatic. While it may not meet the technical definition, the MAGA movement is absolutely cult-like. The portion of their brain that wants a strong leader to fix what they feel is broken, whether it's actually broken or not, whether he can actually fix it or not, overrides almost everything else.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate both of your guys' insight. This was my first call in. I'll probably end up calling it again in the future with more questions and more insight as things go. I really appreciate your guys' time. Thank you. And you guys have a good
to hear
rest of your
from you.
night.
You
Thanks,
just
Dayton. Pleasure. All right. All right. We have more callers. It's interesting because I get it. There's I'm not going to mock the caller for their age or anything, because at 22, that guy is way more involved and probably better informed than maybe more than I was just a year or two ago or 5 years ago or whatever. So congratulations on caring and being involved. But it's a little funny because if I knew how to fix this, every single show would start with, here's how we fix the world we're in. All I can do is tell you what my newer thoughts are after everything else has seemingly failed.
I always viewed politics like the Starfish Project. There was an interesting Starfish Project that was like a faith-based ministry for drug rehab, but they always go back to that analogy where, like, you know, if there's 1,000 starfish on the beach and you throw one back and people are like, do you think you can really make a difference to just one person? Like, well, I made a difference to that starfish there, right? We don't have to change the world. We just need to be able to do, like, everyone on our side can do a little bit to change a couple people's minds, and it has a cascading effect. We don't all have to be heroes here.
All right. We do have a theist call. And it's going to be related to like stigmata and stuff. So Adam from Croatia is a theist, pronouns are he, him, calling about Zlatko. Hey, Adam, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Fine. So we are back with the evidence. Did you ever heard about Zlatko Sudac?
Unfortunately, yeah.
You have heard of him.
Yeah, it's just one of many like fake stigmata. That's all.
So you think he's a fake stigmata? Why do you think he's fake? Did you ever
Because
watch his videos?
the hospital that did the investigation said they could not find any reason that it would be of divine origin.
They didn't say it's fake. What is supposed to
They
mean
said
as
it was
divine origin? That's
Well,
fake.
they're not
They
able to
said-
prove that it's real. And so
Yeah.
if we can't prove it's real, we shouldn't believe it's real, right?
No, they have proved it's real.
Who did?
Who proved it's real? And how?
Vatican Gemelli Hospital. He was
They
sent
didn't,
to
actually.
Vatican to Gemelli Hospital. So this is
that is
what
the
I wanna know.
hospital,
You actually
but
believe it's fake?
They did not say that it was real.
They did.
They did not.
Yes, they did.
When and where?
Show me the statement.
Well, I can't. I'm not prepared to show you the statement.
Oh, why did you call us unprepared? We know what you're talking about. No. We know what you're talking about. We've both looked into it. Let's imagine for a second, though. You're saying that Zlatko has a cross on his forehead, and you also say he's coming back from the dead. How do you demonstrate that he's coming back from the dead?
He was clinically dead for 63 times.
63 times he was clinically dead. And where was this verified?
Well, I don't know, to be honest. I'm not.
You don't
lie.
know. Okay, cool. That's good because it's not listed. Generally speaking, I mean, it's not even like on the Wikipedia page. But let's assume for a second. Let me just grant everything. Let's say that this guy has an indent on his head that's roughly shaped like a cross, and that he has died 63 times. What does that prove?
Well, isn't it
No, I'm
proof?
asking a question. I'm looking for an answer. I'm not looking for a question from you. What does that prove? Even if I were to grant that he's died and come back 63 times, what does that prove?
That proves him as a miracle man.
No, it doesn't.
In that case, you would have to define where does miracle begin for you.
Well, first of all, people can die and be resuscitated, but I don't know how or why he died and how or why he was resuscitated. Why on earth would you have the justification to claim that he's a miracle worker?
He's suffering the passion of Jesus Christ.
No, he's
going
not.
through his pain, and then he dies.
If I bleed out with a cross on my forehead, does that mean there's a God who's encouraging that stigmata?
Yes.
No, it doesn't. Is it possible for me to have a cross on my forehead that bleeds and have it have nothing to do with God? Yes or no?
Wait a minute. What? To have a cross on your head and that it's not coming from God?
Yes. Is that possible?
Some kind of a diabolical delusion. But
no.
Case,
is it possible? Wait, please, I know there's a language barrier here, but please listen carefully. Is it possible for me to have a cross indent in my head and for it not to have come from anything supernatural?
Yes.
Cool. So if it's possible for me to have a cross on my head that's not supernatural, is it also possible that I could have a cross on my head that is caused by something supernatural?
Of course.
You say, of course, for that one. How do you know that's possible?
Yes. Because I am a long year follower of Zlatko Sudac. I was on his seminar.
No. I'm sorry, but I don't care who you're a follower. I don't care who you're a follower of. I asked you, is it possible to have a cross on my head that is supernatural in origin? And you said absolutely. And my question was, how do you know that that's possible?
I don't know how. You are going
okay,
to
then you don't know.
Then
you don't know. You absolutely should not be declaring that something is absolutely possible unless you can demonstrate that it is in fact possible, because I don't see that it is possible at all.
Well, then you should come to the seminars of Zlatko Sudac.
No. You're not listening. I am fine with the notion that somebody could have a cross on their head. How can I determine that it is in fact supernatural in origin?
You can determine by watching videos of Zlatko Sudac.
No. Adam, that's not how. Okay. Here, I have a, can you see the video?
You should watch the video with the English subtitles.
Can you see me right now? Can you see me right now?
The video is a little bit late.
Yes, I know. In a second, stop talking and listen. In a second, I'm holding up a 20-sided die. I'm going to roll this die on the table, and I'm going to tell you what number came up. And then I want you to tell me whether that happened naturally or supernaturally. It came up as 7. Was that natural or supernatural?
The video on YouTube is 30 seconds late. So what you are showing is a little bit confusing from my side. I don't see well what are you saying. YouTube is showing 30 seconds late
Yes.
the picture.
That doesn't
I kept
fucking
the
matter
link-
at all,
watch the
Adam.
video.
I rolled a die just now and it came up with a 7. Is that natural or supernatural?
That's natural
How do you know?
because there is nothing supernatural about it.
How do you know?
Because I have my brain and my eyes, and I can see with my brain and eyes that you are not
How do you
a
tell the
miracle
difference?
maker.
How do you tell the difference between something that is naturally caused and something that is supernaturally caused?
It's very simple. You come tomorrow with a cross on your forehead, and I will believe
No,
you that you're
sir.
a miracle
No,
man.
sir. No, sir.
You
This
can't
is the
do it.
this is the stupidest response I could have expected. I asked about generally. So, is it possible for God to make that die roll a 7? Yes or no?
Yes,
Then how do you know he didn't?
because you did.
No, you don't know that. I could roll it
I
and
do. I
God could
saw it
determine,
on
I could
YouTube.
roll it. I could roll that die and God could make it come up a 7, according to you, correct?
You know, your example is not really the best example for
No, my
whatever
example
you're
is a
trying to.
brilliant example, and you're getting your clock cleaned and you're getting schooled on the basics of epistemology, and you're getting exposed as a fraud because you know that according to your model, if I roll that die, God could make it come up any number he wants, right?
Your example
I'm sorry.
doesn't prove
I'm asking a very specific question, and I'm going to interrupt you and shut you down until you answer my very specific question. According to your views,
so
it is
actually.
possible. I'm sorry. I'm going to mute you since you can't stop interrupting me. Here we go. According to your beliefs, it should be possible for me to roll this die and for God to control that die so that it lands with whatever number God wants. Is that an accurate description of your belief?
Am I unmuted?
Yes, I asked you a question. Is that an accurate description of your belief?
I have to admit that your question
Is that
a
an
little bit
accurate
confusing.
description of your belief?
But I am unable
Is that
to
an
answer
accurate
this
description of your
specific
belief?
question.
Is that an accurate description of your belief?
No, Matt, listen. I
Is
am
that an accurate
unable to
description of your
answer
belief? Is that an accurate description of your belief?
No.
Is
I
that
am
an
a-
accurate
you're,
description of your belief? Yes or no? That's the only word that you're going to get to say is
No,
yes
no.
or no. And if you don't say yes or no,
You
I'm
can-
going to keep interrupting you because now you're being dishonest. Now you know you're completely cooked and trapped and you're crashing out in a big way. Did I make it, according to your beliefs, is it possible for me to roll this die and for God to make it land with whatever number he wants? Yes or no?
Matt,
Yes or no?
It's
Yes or
confusing what you
no?
are saying.
Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no?
No.
Okay, I'm going to give you exactly one opportunity. And I swear to the bullshit God you're trying to lie for, that if you say anything other than yes or no, I will hang up on you and go to the more honest callers that are waiting. So here's the question. Think carefully. You only get to say yes or no. If I roll this die, according to your beliefs, is it possible for God to make that die land with whatever number facing up that God wants? Yes or no?
Yes,
Okay. If God can do that, how do you know that he didn't?
because you did.
Go away, Adam. Go away. Justin, you got anything else?
No, I thought that was a pretty simple explanation. It was over his head, apparently. Also, there have been a lot of people that have had this happen. It's called Lazarus syndrome. And like we actually have real documented cases. There's a woman in Florida that died like 59 times, 58 times, somewhere in there, that have actually been documented. I haven't seen documentation for this guy.
Yeah. Even his Wikipedia page for Sudak doesn't list that death thing. I have a difficult time taking Adam seriously because these are very simple questions. Like, I can put my Christian hat back on. I mean, I was a Christian from the age of 5 until early 30s. It's trivially easy for me to give the answers that I would have given based on my upbringing. It doesn't even take all that much thought. Do I think that if I rolled that die, God could make it come up with whatever number he wants? Yeah. And I
Yes, he
would have
could.
said that even though this 20-sided die currently only has 19 numbers and one symbol on it, that if I rolled this die and God really wanted it to land with a 39, it would land with a 39.
Yeah.
That's the power of the God that I believed in. And if somebody asked me, how do you tell the difference between God controlling this die and God not controlling this die? I would say, I don't know. That's out of my pay grade. I would ask and trust God. Because I don't have a way, nor did I need a way to be able to detect when God was moving. At worst, I would say that I could just feel it, and that it doesn't matter to me whether God did it or not until God tells me that he did it. Because my job was to follow God. My job was to reflect Christ to the world. And so
I think
I wouldn't be calling in to talk about stigmata and dying because, first of all, I wasn't Catholic. Catholics are a big cult. When I was a Southern Baptist, Catholics were a Mary and saint worshiping cult that had extra Bible stuff and all kinds of things like that. So yeah. However, I really like this new Pope. I got to say, I agree with this new
Yeah.
Pope more than any Pope ever.
I think the problem with, and I went to Catholic school for 12 years and we learned about all these miracles. And the question I had that no one can ever answer is, why is God in the business of these nonsense miracles that don't actually help anybody when he could be clearing out hospitals? There's no limit to the miracles. Why is he doing these nonsense miracles like putting a blood on someone's forehead or hands? Like it's such a waste of time.
It is. It's bizarre, but it's one of those things where Adam's called in before, and it's, oh, let me tell you the latest miracle YouTube video that I've fallen for, and all you got to do is go watch the video. No, if you think all you need to do to find the truth about the supernatural or pretty much anything is to watch a YouTube video, somebody has done you a great disservice in teaching you critical thinking and teaching you sound epistemology. I've seen incredible videos long before there was AI generated videos of all sorts of things clearly being faked. I mean, The Exorcist is just a film that purports to reflect actual events. The special effects in The Exorcist were enough to completely freak people out at the time. And now I'd say a lot of it looks a little more laughable. We know it was pea soup. I literally have, this is a copy. This is funny. There's a copy of Mike Oldfield's album, Tubular Bells, which is the theme song from The Exorcist. And that's actually signed by Linda Blair, who was in The Exorcist. And I have a picture of her on the back when this got signed. So this is an autographed copy of an album, and so that's the theme from The Exorcist. But she'll tell you what it was. It's pea soup and all that stuff, and nobody needs to know that because it's just a movie. But if you think that you can tell the difference between natural and supernatural causation by watching a YouTube video, I weep for our future if we can't find a way to teach people like Adam better. And I just know that if I'm trying my best to ask the questions that I think should expose this, and Adam's barriers go up, like, no, what you're saying is no, what this is, no, what that, we can't have a productive conversation until that stops. And so, I know people don't like it. Hey, you put somebody in kindergarten and you made them answer yes or no. Yes, but that was after multiple attempts to give them leeway to explain. We'll see. We have other callers, including a couple of the theists. So
yeah, I think we got two of them in queue now. I'm excited for the theists in queue. Listen, we're here to be convinced by your claims and your evidence. So by all means, you could do a lot of good for your religion by giving a really good case. Even if you don't convince us, you might convince others. So come on up and join the conversation.
Chris is calling from Idaho, pronouns are him. He says, how do hosts reconcile the fact that most religions point to Christ in some sort of way? Ooh, I don't. Hey, Chris, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Okay.
I'll let you ask your question. I have lots of thoughts about this, but I talked a lot on the last one and I got kind of hyped. So
Okay.
I would push back and say that most religions don't point to Christ, but you may mean it in a different way. So let's hear your case and I'll let Justin jump in.
Well, I mean, so for an example, Islam, like they acknowledge Jesus Christ as a figure that's very important, but it's just they have a different interpretation of what he obviously, you know what I mean? Like it differs from Christianity, and that he was a very important person. And then, I mean, if you just talk to, people out on the streets, they acknowledge him as an important figure. You know what I'm saying? Like, if this guy was just a quack or something, and there wasn't some type of importance of what he came and he did, then I just don't think that we would have acknowledged it. Does that make sense?
Was Muhammad a quack?
Say it one more time.
Was Muhammad a quack?
Well, I mean, he came with a differing message from. It was opposite of Christ in a way.
Was
right?
Was he a truth teller, or was he a quack?
Well, I mean, that's up to the person to decide. I mean,
do you think he was telling the truth?
My own personal view of him is that he wasn't. I would say I would lean more toward, obviously Jesus Christ and his teachings and
Muhammad.
What he
was Muhammad a quack, or was he a true prophet?
Well, I'm not going to use that word quack. I'm just going to say that he's, that
is Islam true? Yes or no?
It's not true.
Okay, so my point here is that you can be a very influential religious leader and still be wrong. Like, the size of the influence is irrelevant to whether or not the religion is true. And you can just tell that Christianity is not true just by reading the book. In fact, even if Jesus rose from the dead, Christianity still isn't true. So I get that, like, he's very influential. A lot of people like him, but that has nothing to do with whether or not the claims of Christianity are true.
Okay. But are there claims of Muhammad raising from the dead? Like, are there extraordinary
There's lots of miracle claims in Islam.
You know what I mean?
Why is that? I'm sorry. I know I said something legit. We're trying to discover something. None of us are denying. So first of all, you can't even demonstrate that. I'm not a mythicist. I'm not asserting that Jesus didn't exist, but you can't demonstrate that he did exist. You can't demonstrate that any word attributed to him was spoken by him. You can't demonstrate that any action attributed to him was actually something that he did. What you have are stories. And I will be the first to recognize those stories have impacted billions of people, sometimes in a positive way, and sometimes in a very negative way. Nobody is in any way denying that Christianity and the Christ figure, whether he ever existed or not, is influential. The point Justin's trying to get to is the same one that I wanted to get to, is whether or not somebody, real or fiction, because Harry Potter has inspired a bunch of people, whether or not somebody has had an impact on society is completely separate from whether or not their claims or the things attributed to them are true, right?
Well, I know, but if we look at...
I'm sorry, that was a right. That was a question to see if you agreed that the mere fact that somebody has influenced society doesn't tell you anything about whether or not what they said was true, or even if they were real, right?
The difference between...
I'm sorry,
Harry Potter,
when I say right, I'm asking you to either say yes or no. to the thing that I just proposed.
Can I make a point?
This is how,
Matt?
I'm sorry that you don't seem to understand how an actual discussion goes, but I'm offering a position and I'm asking you if you agree with it in order to determine if you are rational or if you are clowning. So when I say the fact that someone, whether they are real or not, impacted society is not in any way an indicator of whether or not their claims are true, do you agree with that?
I will agree with you on that. Yes.
Thank you. I don't know why that was so hard.
Okay. Can I make a point now, though?
As long as you don't whine
so
about it, because you were the one being difficult here, not me.
You brought up Harry Potter and you brought up Jesus. Okay.
Yep.
If you look at the story of Jesus, there's a lot of insignificant references in the Bible about certain, like, let me give you, I'm trying to think of like women discovering his tomb when that wouldn't have been really the popular.
No, that's exactly what would have happened. No, you're 100% wrong. Women were typically women were typically in charge of spicing bodies
up in a way that's like.
Yeah.
Hold on,
This
Chris.
guy's not for real.
Chris, just pause. You just said something that's drastically untrue. Women were largely in charge of spicing and wrapping bodies. That doesn't mean it couldn't have been done by a man. In fact, there are definitely occasions we know of where men were participants, but women were largely in charge of this type of care. So we would expect women to be the first ones at the tomb that would discover the body's missing, because they would be the ones, if you were writing a story, that would be there to spice the bodies.
Okay, but there's other examples in the Bible where there's like details that just aren't something that would be attractive for, you know what I mean? Like this.
No, Chris, you're not listening. Okay. My question was, you asked listening. You're not listening. Listen.
Okay.
You asked, how do we reconcile the fact, interrupt me again, I dare you. You asked us, how do we reconcile the fact that most religions point to Christ? Most religions may not point to Christ. There are over 10,000 different religions, but I get what you're saying. He's an incredibly influential figure. We acknowledge that he's incredibly influential. I am a former Christian, as is Justin. We understand the impact. We are actively fighting some of that impact. And when you acknowledge that his impact is not in any way a testimony of the truth of his claims or the claims attributed to him, you immediately go to, well, there's things in the Bible that don't make sense. And your very first example turns out to be false. But let's assume for a second that it wasn't false. What would that prove?
Well, I was just trying to draw a parallel between.
I didn't ask what you were trying. I didn't ask what you were. I didn't ask what you were trying to do. I didn't ask what you were trying. Did I ask you what you were trying to do, or did I ask you what it would prove? Are you going to have an actual honest conversation with us, or are you just calling in to try to be obstinate? Because I literally am doing everything in my power to give you the opportunity to rehabilitate your terrible arguments and the fact that the first things you said were false, in order to give a better argument. Because unlike, I could put on, Justin and I could have a conversation where I could defend your beliefs better than you can. So please listen when I ask you the question, which is, does the fact, if it were true that the body was discovered by women, or the lack of a body, or the ascended body, because it's different depending on which gospel you read, does that in any way add credence to the claim that the story is true? Yes or no?
No.
Then why bring it up?
Because, okay, the reason I brought it up is because women were like looked down on during that time, and it would have been more, you know, like when you drew a parallel, you're like, with, you know, why shouldn't everybody believe Harry Potter, or, you know, these other things? Those stories are dressed up to be sexy and draw engagement. And this example is just like, I'm trying to think of some other ones in the Bible, but if you read the New Testament, there's, you know, where Jesus is
if we read the New Testament, this is hilarious, Chris, because after saying that no, it wouldn't add credence to it, Every bit of your reply is suggesting that you think it does add credence, that because they weren't trusted, that adds credence. That's the implication you're making. And now you're desperately trying to think of the next thing and saying, if you read the New Testament, you do realize we've read the New Testament, right? Many times, taught it,
Yes, I do.
used to
But
believe it,
can I bring
and
up an
corrected it,
example?
and educated it. So what we're saying here is you asked us about by the way, my analogy to Harry Potter wasn't why shouldn't people believe in Harry Potter? It was merely pointing out that it's entirely possible for a fictional person to influence people. And so pointing out that someone has influence doesn't in any way tell you whether it's true. It doesn't in any way suggest that I was saying people should be following Harry Potter, although they are. They absolutely are. And there are people who think they're Jedis and all kinds of stuff. I want to know if it's true. Do you have a way to demonstrate why we should think it's true?
Okay. I wanted to point out another
I'm sorry.
example in the Bible.
I literally
Okay.
just asked you.
John the
I
Baptist.
literally see you're
Hold
not
on, hold on.
listening.
Can
You are no, you don't tell me to fucking hold on my own fucking show. I literally just asked you, do you have a reason for us to think it's true? And you ignored that and went on to the next thing in your script. I'm going to shut up now because I'm not going to allow you to piss me off to the point where I yell and shut you the fuck down. Instead, I'm going to let Justin take all the rest of this call while I play chess, because it's clear you and I are not capable of having a conversation, because I care too much about honesty and accuracy. I care too much about if you ask me a question, I fucking answer it. And if I ask you a question, you dodge and go on to the next thing. So I'm not the right guy to talk to you. So I'm going to respectfully bow out and see if maybe you'll do better with Justin. Here we go.
I've got a question for you, Chris. Does the recipe for
go ahead.
bread include flour?
Say it one more time.
Does the recipe for bread include flour?
Yes, it does.
Oh, that was easy. You just said yes. So when we ask you other questions, like related to the Bible or related to religion, and it's a yes or no, we just need the yes or no. We don't need anything after that, right? We're trying to get somewhere in the dialogue. And so when you don't answer yes or no questions, we don't actually get to go anywhere, right? So if you ask us a question, we're going to give you the answer. We're just asking the same respect from you. So let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Why would we trust what's in this Bible, or even trust the words of Jesus, when it just openly lies to us over and over and over again?
Well, I mean, the way that you're framing it, you're already assuming that there's lies in it without really knowing that. So that's
I do know that. Want to see one?
I mean, you're making an assumption that it's not truth in your question. You understand?
You can fix it for me then. How about I'll give you a Bible verse and you tell me if it's true.
Okay.
It's a fun game. Okay, so you've probably read a little bit of Matthew, I assume. You know, it's the first gospel people open up. In Matthew, we get this interesting spot in chapter 27, verse 9. And this is in reference to the field of blood and the 30 pieces of silver when Jesus is betrayed. And it says, then was fulfilled what had been spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. And then he quotes, theoretically, Jeremiah, saying, and they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of the one on whom a price had been set, on whom some of the people of Israel had set a price, and they gave them for the potter's field. Now, this quote is interesting because Matthew's suggesting that Jesus here is fulfilling a prophecy, directly quotes that prophecy, and then says that it's in Jeremiah. Are you able to find that for me? In fact, I'll pay you if you can find it for me. I'll Venmo you $100 during this live stream.
I mean, that I haven't done research on that specific verse, and I just think that that's kind of like bringing us into like a longer conversation. You know what I mean? Like we want to keep it as short as possible, right? So
trust me, it's going to be short.
But my point, what I was just
do you
trying
want me to answer the? You want me to give you the answer to the problem?
Sure.
The answer to the problem is that he got it wrong. That's a partial quote from Zechariah, and it's nothing to do with the Messiah. Has literally nothing to do with Jesus. In fact, the two individuals in that chapter are both essentially wicked. So unless Jesus is wicked, it can't even be about him. And again, that doesn't even show up in Jeremiah. So not only is it not a prophecy, it's not a prophecy about Jesus, it also doesn't mention anyone being betrayed, and it doesn't even come from Jeremiah. The author of this gospel doesn't know what he's doing. He's not very bright. I'm not going to, if he can't quote the Hebrew Bible to me appropriately, I'm not going to believe the other claims. Like, for example, he doesn't even know how to talk about the virgin birth without making himself look stupid, like he doesn't understand classical Greek. So this guy writing a story about Jesus, I'm not inclined to believe. He's saying things that are demonstrably untrue.
Okay. And okay, so you said there's nothing in the actual reference in Matthew to that text. You're saying that he completely got the text wrong. That's what you're saying? That it was a different book in the Bible?
Sure did.
And it was a reference to somebody that was.
Mm-hmm.
Can you have the, what was it? Zechariah?
It's going to be Zechariah 11. And Zechariah 11 is a performative prophecy of God dealing with the people of Israel hundreds of years before Jesus was even around. And it's a really interesting prophecy, but nobody's actually being betrayed in that prophecy. There's no Messiah in that prophecy, nothing.
Okay. Well, I mean, I would have to take a look at that and kind of study that before I could say yes or no. You know what I mean?
Do you have a reference Bible on you?
I mean, I don't have anything in front of me at the moment. You know, I'm just having a conversation with you guys.
I bet Matt's got one on him right now with references. In fact, I've got one myself right here.
Okay.
I bet if I open up Matthew 27, it's going to say that it comes from Zechariah 11. And I don't want to belabor the point. This is just a very important point, which is that, listen, who's ever writing this gospel has no idea what they're doing. They're goofy. They don't know what's in the Hebrew Bible, and they have no idea what the actual requirements are for a Messiah. And remember, Christianity is based on this idea that Jesus is the Messiah.
Right.
So here comes a quote right here from Zechariah chapter 11, verses 12 and 13. And this is in the Catholic Study Bible, 3rd edition, in the footnotes.
All right, go ahead.
So my point is pretty clear. Matthew's kind of a goof. He's not very smart, which is why, like, when you read the rest of Matthew's reference of the Hebrew Bible, he just screws it up at every turn. He misquotes it. He actually can't read Hebrew. That seems fundamentally clear. He, even like the one time he ever quoted something from the Hebrew Bible, he doesn't even understand what it's about. So when I'm reading like even like basic narratives in the book of Matthew, I just don't have a good reason to trust this source. And then it gets worse when you turn to like the first 2 chapters. When you read the birth narrative, like Matthew and Luke don't agree on when Jesus was born. Matthew doesn't even know how to quote the lineage of Jesus. And Mark does the same problem. Mark attributes a prophecy to Isaiah in Mark chapter 1 that's actually not Isaiah. It comes from Malachi.
Okay.
These gospel authors don't know what they're doing. They're goofy. They're not writing for God.
Okay. I mean, this is the first time I've heard this, so I'd have to do my own individual research on what you're talking about. But I still think that people are people, and there's going to be, you know what I mean? There's going to be mistakes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the claim about this person being divine isn't true. You know what I'm saying? Like,
why would we accept the claim when he can't get the small stuff right? Remember, the Bible says that, you know, those who are faithful in little will be given much. Why would we try to take much from Matthew and the other Gospels if it can't be faithful even in the little?
Well, because, I mean, there's going to be little details that probably aren't core to the message that, you know, what Jesus spoke about was the core
to what message?
Spirituality.
But why do
So
I care about
little
Jesus' message
details that
if
you're
he's not the
kind of
Messiah?
that you're
You're
referencing to could
You
just
got the
be
cart before the horse,
genuine
Chris.
human error. You understand?
But Chris, let me ask you a question. If I told you that I'm the Messiah, I'm the Messiah, and then I quoted you some Bible passages from the Hebrew Bible wrong, and you're like, actually, Justin, I don't think you're the Messiah. You're misquoting the Hebrew Bible, and I would say, well, actually, mistakes are going to be made. I'm still the Messiah. You wouldn't accept that. You'd be like, hey, listen, the Messiah should be able to quote the Hebrew Bible correctly. And not even Jesus is able to quote it correctly. He screws up Isaiah chapter 61 and Luke chapter 4. And he lies.
And
He lies
I'm sorry,
again.
what were those reference? You said Isaiah, what now?
I'm saying Isaiah 61 and Luke chapter 4, Jesus misuses. He fundamentally doesn't understand what the passage is about. It's about the restoration of the Israelite people after the Babylonian captivity, which is obvious if you bother to read from verse 1 all the way to verse 5. He quotes part of verse 1, incorrectly, by the way. It doesn't match the Hebrew or the Greek Old Testament. He misquotes it, leaves out the most important part, where it actually gives you the context for what's happening. And then today, he says, today is being fulfilled in your hearing. No, it's not. This is about the restoration of the Israelite people. It says they're going to restore the ruined cities, rebuild the foundations. That didn't happen.
Okay.
They got slaughtered alive by the Romans when, shortly after Jesus died. He didn't rebuild anything.
Okay. Well, I mean, like I said, I'm going to have to do my own research on what you're, referencing here. I haven't really looked into it, and I didn't know that Jesus made any, references to Isaiah and wasn't accurate on it. What
let me
passage
give you
said Isaiah?
It's Isaiah 61.
Okay.
Let me give you one other passage where Jesus lies, and maybe you can go back and read it. I'll read you the important part right now to show you that this Jesus character, if he said the things that the Gospels said he said, then he's an idiot. John 13:18 talks about his own betrayal. And he says, I know whom I've chosen, meaning I've chosen the one who's going to betray me, right? I know whom I've chosen, but it is to fulfill the scripture. And then he quotes the scripture. That scripture is, the one who ate my bread has lifted his heel against me. Well, that comes from Psalm 41. So we should be able to go to Psalm 41 and be like, hey, is there a prophecy about the Messiah being betrayed here? And when you go back and read it, no, it's not a prophecy. It's King David writing about his own struggles, which is why it literally says, as for me, I said, O Lord, be gracious to me and heal me, for I've sinned against you. This person who's speaking in the first person is not a future Jesus. It's David. He's a sinner. So when he gets to verse 8 and 9, when he says, they think that a deadly thing has fastened to me and that I will not rise. And then it says, even my close friend in whom I've trusted, who ate of my bread, has lifted his heel against me. This is David talking about his stuff. This isn't a prophecy about Jesus, not a prophecy about a Messiah. It's nonsense that Jesus thinks he could just go and grab random verses from the Hebrew Bible and turn them into prophecies just because one line sounds vaguely familiar to something he's experiencing. That's easy. I can do that. In fact, I've got a whole list of prophecies that I've personally fulfilled, as long as we get to ignore the entire context of the text and like who it was designed to speak to and who it was from and who it was actually about. Fulfilling prophecies out of context is like really super easy.
One might argue that I made a prophecy about which one of us would be more effective at talking to our caller, and I just fulfilled that prophecy, and Justin helped.
Okay. Well, do you guys want to wrap this up? I mean, if you have other callers and stuff, I don't want to. I mean,
keep going.
I need to do a little bit more research, and I'm always open to, expanding and because this is the thing. Like, I'm trying to figure this out as much as you guys are. Like, I want to know the truth. Like, that's very important to me, So, that's part of, every day.
I do have one comment.
I think we're always thinking about that, right? Like, we want to know what the truth is, and we want to align with it.
But I do have one important comment, and that is a minute ago, when you got to a point where Justin had showed that something wasn't believable, you said, well, that doesn't prove it wasn't true. And you're completely right. but it's not up to us or anyone to prove that something isn't true. The time to believe something is only after it has been demonstrated that it is true and likely true. You don't get to assume something is true and wait for someone to prove it wrong, because what you may be talking about may be unfalsifiable. And unfalsifiable claims are useless and cannot be warranted by any case. No epistemology that is just and sound can warrant an unfalsifiable claim for belief. So what you've been taught about all of this is, oh, if they can't prove it false, I'm still on good ground. No, you are not on good ground until you prove it true.
Okay. Well, I mean, so you obviously are thinking about it in the terms of black and white, like it needs to be crystal clear to you.
No,
that
sir.
This is the truth.
No, sir, Chris.
No?
No, sir. Something is either
Okay.
true or not true, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did I say anything about absolute certainty or crystal clear? No. I'm talking about evidential warrant. If there's warrant to believe that something is true, I will accept it. There is not warrant to believe that the Bible stories or any supernatural claim is true.
But don't we operate, isn't the way that we conduct our lives and live like the morality, like aligning with goodness, doing, like, doesn't that align with what Jesus Christ taught?
No.
Like these are
Is it
God.
wrong? Is it wrong for two guys to have sex?
Well, I'm saying, like,
I'm
what
sorry,
you're
that was a
talking
yes or no
about is,
question.
like,
I'm sorry, that was a yes or no question. Is it wrong for two guys to have sex?
why do you always bring up gay when it seems like that's the thing that you
I'm
always
sorry. I'm
ask
sorry,
me when I
Chris.
call.
I'm sorry, Chris. It appears that you're only going to be dishonest as fuck when I'm actually talking to you.
I'm not being dishonest. I would
Yes,
just
you
say
are.
that,
Listen to me. Listen to me very carefully, because I'm holding back. You asked if we generally follow the morality attributed to Jesus and or the Bible, since Jesus is supposedly God through all of that. I asked a single question, which you refused to answer, and immediately you accused me of, why do you always bring up gay? Okay, is slavery morally permissible? Yes or no? You're going to dodge that one too, aren't you? You're going to dodge that one too, aren't you? This is really bad, because you're the one that's saying, don't we generally? And I get it. I get it, Chris. You've been taught, oh, generally. Okay. Do you think there, and this is fine, you don't have to have any justification for this. Do you think there's a God and a devil, and that God is the good one and the devil is the bad one?
Yes, I do. Definitely.
Cool. Thank you for that answer. How did you determine that God is the good one and the devil is the bad one? What standard did you use?
From personal experience.
How can your personal experience determine whether God is the good one or the devil is the good one?
Well, I mean, the devil's his what's the word? We can identify his so these hideous acts that happen every day in our lives, or that we, not in our lives, but that we hear about, like, children getting killed and, the Holocaust and all this stuff. That's basically his influence coming into our reality.
So
do you understand?
I asked what standard you could use to tell whether God is the good one or the evil one, or whether the devil is the good one or the evil one. And you just said bad things that happen or things that you disagree with, you attribute to the devil. First of all, I don't think there is a devil, but in the Bible, let's go back to Genesis 1. You're aware that Genesis 1 gets the order of creation wrong, right? Like, which came first, the earth or the sun?
Well, I mean, let there be light. So there was
No. I didn't
right?
ask anything at all about let there be light. Did I, Chris? I asked which came first, the sun or the earth? Yeah, Chris can't be honest when he's interacting with me. Chris will not answer a question honestly, and that's why I think you're a troll, Chris. That's why I think you're full of shit. And Justin got you.
I'm not a troll.
Okay,
told
then
you
answer the
I'm
fucking
dedicated
question
to
and
figuring
prove
out the
it, you
truth,
little
Matt.
coward. I'm sitting here.
I'm not
I'm
being a
asking
coward.
you
Why
the
do you have to
question.
personally
You are a
attack me?
coward. I'm going to mute you,
I'm
and you're going to
telling
sit
you.
there. You're going to sit there and you're going to listen to me, and I'm going to remain calm because we've already schooled your dumbass. And you know that I'm asking the questions that if you answer, see, here's the thing. I've done this for 20 years, so I know how to cut to the chase. And that's a problem for people like you because I'm not going to let you ramble and deflect. Genesis chapter 1 gets the order of events wrong from the standpoint of science. The standpoint of science would be that the sun existed prior to the earth. Genesis has that backwards. It has a number of other things backwards as well. I didn't ask you about light or what came first with light, and the light that comes first doesn't have to be the sun or anything else. It gets the order of events wrong. And when I came up with a specific example that shows this crystal clear, in black and white, in crystal clear, absolute black and white, like you would prefer to pretend that I'm doing that, you instead deflect to, light came first, which you know for a fucking fact isn't what I asked you. And you know that if you answered the question I asked you, you'd get schooled because the Bible is inconsistent with science there. It's also inconsistent with science in whether or not a bat is a bird. Then in Genesis chapter 3, the devil basically says, hey, why aren't you eating this? The devil told the truth. The woman says, God told us that if we eat that, we will die. And the devil says, no, you won't die. And they didn't die. Oh, well, it's a spiritual death. This is why spiritual and spirituality are nonsense. Because as Arden pointed out, spiritual basically means not really. Like they died, but not really. That's the context there. So the Bible gets that wrong as well. The devil isn't even in the garden. It's a serpent, but it's a revisionist thing to suggest that maybe that's the devil or Satan. By the way, devil, Satan, Lucifer, morning star, also attributed to Jesus, was supposedly an angel that was God's henchman, who then put Job on trial. God allowed one of his loyal servants to be fucked with extraordinarily by the devil. But he also sends the devil out to be his accuser. Rough guess. In the Bible, who kills more innocent people, God or the devil?
Okay, you just brought up the devil being, the
No.
serpent,
I asked
right?
a question. Chris. The question was, in the Bible, who kills more innocent people, God or the devil?
You're always framing this in a way that
Yes, I'm framing it in a way that
argument.
gets to the truth. You're someone who claimed you wanted to get to the truth, and yet every time I ask you a question, we're saying the truth will show that you do not believe the truth. You complain about me. You can't fluster me. I'm in a place of serene peace right now because I've already made you look like a complete clown after Justin showed that you don't have a fucking clue what you're talking about. Every time I ask you a question, you try to pretend like I'm the problem here and you refuse to answer the question. So I'm going to ask you this question one more time. In the Bible,
I don't like
who kills in the Bible, who kills in the Bible, who kills more innocent people, God or the devil?
I refuse to answer the question because of how you're framing it.
It's not a framed question. It's literally a math question, you dipshit.
You know what, man?
It's literally a math question. Hey, which came first, the earth or the sun? And that's not a framing question. That is, what does the Bible say? But the problem is, you don't know what the Bible says, but you know enough to know which ones you shouldn't answer. You're an embarrassment. I could defend Christianity better than you right now. I was a better Christian than you when I was a Christian, and I'm a better Christian than you still. Okay. Wild. This is absolutely wild, Chris. You should be embarrassed. Like if Jesus is real, you are embarrassing the fuck out of him right now.
Okay. Well, I'm going to end this conversation because you're.
You know what? You're not going to end this conversation. I'm going to end this conversation because you repeatedly refuse to answer my question. So I'm not going to listen to your parting words. I would rather engage with a hopefully honest theist. and we have 2 on the line, and it's rude and disrespectful for you to refuse to answer obvious questions and keep those people on hold.
It's easy when the question has no bearing on like the point he's trying to prove, he'll answer it. He knows that wheat, flour is included in bread, but when you ask him easy questions about the Bible, all of a sudden I'm tongue-tied.
You're framing it in a way that's just not fair for me and Jesus. Well, tell Jesus to come talk to me because you failed. All right, let's see. There's 2 other theists on hold, and we need to apologize for letting that go on long. Well, there was 2 theists on hold, but one of them just ran away or hung up. I shouldn't say that. That's dishonest. I apologize. Cole, I'm not going to say that you ran away. I will retract that. Cole was on hold to respond to the title, No Good Evidence for God, and then hung up right when I was getting ready to put him live. So Cole, if you call back, you'll be next. But we have Matthew in Tennessee. Matthew's a theist, pronouns are he, him, who says biological evidence points toward a creator. How are you, Matthew? Good name.
I'm blessed. Thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm fat, dumb, and happy. What do you got for us?
Wonderful. So my question to you would be, does organization ever arise out of chaos? Can you
Yes.
point to an example in nature or science?
Yes.
Give me an example of organization arising spontaneously out of chaos.
Oh, spontaneously. Where did that word come from? That wasn't in your original question. There's order that
Okay.
appears amongst the seeming chaos, things like sand dunes, but the notion that the universe was chaos, that order came from, is also false.
Okay, where did the universe come from?
I don't know. Do you?
I do know. God created it.
How do you know that? Because I'm not
Now-
even aware that the universe in some form didn't exist forever. So how do you know God did it?
Well, you don't want biblical evidence because you've already rejected that. You don't want experiential evidence because that's
I'm sorry.
all one-sided. You can't
I'm sorry,
experience
Matthew.
what
Did I ask you to
experience.
make a list of what I don't want, or did I ask you to give me the reason?
All right. So if you want to get down to the brass tacks, from a logical
Yes.
standpoint, everything comes down to a paradox. What came first, the chicken or the egg? What came first, the universe or the singularity? Or what came first, the universe or the multiverse?
Well, what are you talking
No matter
about
what
right
you
now?
do, okay, so it's a logical fallacy
If
to
the-
say that there
If
is
the universe
an
existed
effect
in the
without
form of
a
a
cause.
singularity, it's not a matter of which came first. The universe would be the singularity. Also, singularity, there's no such thing as a singularity. Singularity is just describing like the mathematical point where some of the math breaks down. And it's not saying that the universe was in a singularity. They're just saying this is as far as our math will take us. That's all it is. And to buttress Matt's point, we actually don't have any evidence that the universe once didn't exist. And the little evidence we do have currently seems to suggest that we're in some kind of a cyclical model. We do need some more verification from the DESI data to see, how good that last set of data was. But so far, it looks like we might be in a cyclical universe, which means it might very well last forever. And is there a good
That's
reason to
arguable,
believe that it once
because
didn't
the
exist?
universe is expanding and the force of gravity isn't enough for it to contract once again.
This
So
time.
Actually,
if it's
that's not
cyclical,
true.
you run into a real big problem because
That's not true.
how does it contract? Because it's
Matthew.
expanding too fast, too rapidly.
For
Matthew,
now,
for it to
it's
ever-
expanding fast.
Be overcome
Matthew,
by
I'd
the force of
recommend
gravity and be sucked back together.
Matthew, I'd recommend you call in maybe tomorrow and talk to a physicist or whatever. I asked you if you knew how the universe began. I don't even know that it did begin, and you said you do. And then I asked you how you know, and you started. I'm sorry, well, I don't know why you're interrupting me, but I asked you how you knew, and you started listing all the evidence you think I don't want. Are you willing to answer the question of how you know that God did it?
How I know that God did it is because I have experiential evidence
what?
that shows me that God is real, that His word
No,
is
no.
true.
So
He's confirmed it time and time again.
hang on. You say you have experiential
But
evidence
that's
that confirms.
experiential.
I'm sorry. You say you have experiential
Okay.
evidence that God is real. I asked you, how do you know God created the universe?
Because the Bible says, Genesis 1, verse 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
Cool. I agree with you that that's what the Bible says. Which came first, the earth or the sun?
The earth came first. I heard you with the previous caller. May I answer that?
So the Bible says the earth came first. Science says the sun existed before the earth. Why do you think the Bible's right and science is wrong?
Well, science does not have definitive answers on most things. It's very subjective. What evidence do you want to prefer?
No, sir. No, sir. That's not the case. I'm asking, why do you think that the Bible is correct about the order of sun or earth and that science is wrong? And your answer seems to be that science is subjective when science is all about trying to avoid subjectivity. And the Bible is just a claim that doesn't have supporting evidence. I'm asking, why should we prefer the Bible's explanation to the actual facts and evidence that science relies on?
Well, here's the thing. Like I said before, no matter what you do, you're going to come to a logical fallacy.
No,
God
sir.
is just as much a logical fallacy.
No, sir. As somebody who has taught logic for
theory.
years, I don't need you to lecture me on logical fallacies. I need you to answer the question that I asked you, which is, why should we prefer the Bible's order of events for the sun and the earth to the ones from science?
Because science is often proven incorrect. You give it a few years and the theories will change.
Yes, that's great, Matthew.
It used to be the Big Bang.
Great, Matt. That's
There's
Matthew.
too many problems.
Matthew.
You asked me a question.
Matthew.
Do you want me to answer?
Yes, and now I'm interrupting you to correct you. That's going to happen every time because your answer is science is often proven wrong. I have a follow-up question to that. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Has it been proven wrong on the order of sun and earth yet? That's a yes or no.
Science cannot do that.
I'm sorry. That was a yes or no question.
It cannot prove
Has science been proven wrong on the order of events? Why are you talking? Has science been proven wrong on the order of events on the sun and earth? Yes or no? Another dishonest person.
The framing of the question.
Here, I'm going to do both sides of this conversation because you won't. Just like the last caller, you guys refuse to answer the questions that expose just how wrong you are. The reality is that science does frequently get corrected, that the findings of science are improved. In the entire history of the world, every single time science has been corrected, it has been by better, newer science. Never in the history of the world has any religious claim disproved science. It's not even possible. Your claims are static and without evidential support. They are based on adoption by faith. You say you prefer the Bible's order of events of earth before the sun to the ones of science because science sometimes turns out to be wrong. And I would agree with you, but the thing that proves science wrong is more science, not religious fiction. Until you come up with supporting evidence for the Bible's order of events, science wins. Science has this much evidence, and the Bible has none for the order of events that it lists. There is no evidence that I'll ask you, is there evidence that you can point to that shows that the Bible's order of earth and then sun after is correct?
No, not outside of the Bible.
No, there's not evidence. So you have a claim that you believe without evidence, and you are dismissing a massive amount of evidence because you think it might be wrong. So let's be honest here. You don't care about truth. you just believe the Bible over science. That's fine. You can do that. But you don't care about truth.
I really dig science. I study quite
No, you
a bit.
don't. No, you don't. You're a
there's so
liar.
many
You don't
problems
dig
with-
science. You don't dig science. You just shit on science and dismissed it by believing one claim that you admit you do not have evidence for. Don't you dare lie to me. Just own it. You're anti-science.
I'm most certainly not anti-science. What I am is
You literally are. I mean, I have it here. I'm going to mute you because this is too much fun for me. I literally have a recording now of you that will live on the internet forever, Matthew, of you saying you prefer the Bible story without supporting evidence over the actual evidence of science. I hate to break it to you, but that makes you anti-science, at least on that issue, and probably on many more. Because here's the question. If the Bible and science disagree, will you ever side with science over what the Bible says?
If the science can irrefutably, irrevocably prove the Bible wrong, but it can, it never has.
So I'm going to mute you again because you just demonstrated again that you are not someone who digs science, because science doesn't irrefutably, irrevocably prove or disprove anything. Science doesn't make proclamations of truth. Science constructs models and theories that are the best current explanation of the evidence. So you have set up a scenario in which you're going to believe the Bible until something that science cannot do, that maybe nothing could ever do, because I don't believe we can have access to absolute certainty. We can only have confidence proportioned to the evidence. So you're going to say, I'll only choose science over the Bible if science does something that it cannot and never does. You, sir, are in fact anti-science. You've just demonstrated you don't understand what science is, you don't understand the value of it, and you don't respect it. And you want somebody to prove you wrong. You have a belief that you accept, and you acknowledge you have no evidence to support it, and you will hang on to it until somebody absolutely proves you wrong. Absolutely, irrevocably. But you'll ignore the scientific findings that are based on gravity, math, observations, and billions of data points across an entire universe of exploration. You will dismiss all of that because it doesn't absolutely, irrevocably show that your belief that you have with no evidence is false. That is the definition. That is the prime example of someone who prioritizes their belief over the truth. It is the prime example of someone who does not understand sound epistemology and does not know or care how to get to the truth. You are, in fact, anti-science, and I'm happy to let you know that. But welcome back.
Okay. Now that you've established that I'm anti-science, which I'm not.
You are.
Let me ask you a question.
Nope. Talk to Justin.
What
I'm
are the
done
odds
with you.
of RNA and DNA forming spontaneously through natural
I don't need you to
processes
quote odds. You don't trust
by
science.
themselves?
You can't do any fucking math.
I can do math.
No, you
I've
can't.
done
No, you
math.
can't. And here's what I'm going to show you. See, and then I'm genuinely going to stop talking, and I'll let, I don't know, Justin figure out another way to school you, because right now you're just a clown. See, you won't stop believing the Bible until there's absolute certainty. But now you're asking me about probabilities. What's the probability of RNA and DNA? Here, I'm going to ask you one simple question. I'll bet you can't answer it. I'm going to unmute you right now so that there's no beep for you to hear when I'm asking a question. What's the probability that a God exists and created the universe?
Experientially, I witness miracles, so I can say for a certainty 100% for my personal self. From a scientific standpoint, you cannot prove nor disprove the existence of God. You can, however, look at the available evidence and say, what's more logical?
I asked
Is
you.
it
No,
more
sir.
logical to
No,
believe
sir.
that
I'm
these
going
things?
to mute you for a second. I'm going to wrap up. Then I'm going to just leave it to Justin. I ran a laugh track over you. We're all mocking you because I asked you what the probability was, and the first word out of your mouth was experientially. That's not how probability is done there, Captain Ma. And then you skipped from probability to logic. I definitely don't need to hear your thoughts on logic because you don't understand or appreciate that either. But I now have nothing more to say to you, but Justin might, and that's only fair. So congratulations. You have managed to beat me down with a level of incredulity, dishonesty, and anti-science and ignorance about math that I rarely see. Here you go. Justin might have something. I'm sorry.
Matthew, I just want to point out, like,
May I
remember you
respond?
came into the go for it, and then I'll got a couple questions for you.
All right. I mean, you've been on a 20-minute diatribe, and I've barely spoken. So how would you know what I believe or don't believe? I thought you wanted to have an honest intellectual conversation, which obviously you don't. All you want to do is
Matt's already
fun
done with you,
and-
so
and
asking
point the
more
finger and
questions
say-
isn't gonna do much for you. You want to address like an actual point, or did you want to complain about what Matt said?
What I would like to do is point out very simply that science has lots of theories. They don't have lots of things nailed down to a concrete law.
Well,
And the
first of
theories
all, I don't
change
know.
over time because
I don't
as
think that's
more and more evidence
I
arises.
don't think that's true.
Do I get to finish
Matthew.
the thought at all?
Nah,
Do I get
No,
to finish
so-
any thought?
no. And the
What
reason
is
why
the point
is
of having your
because
show if you're too
because
afraid
you-
to engage
because you
with somebody
can't-
who actually has?
no one's actually afraid to engage, Matthew. The reason why is because your answers need to be concise and not yappy, right? I'm not interested in a whole diatribe. I think we could actually get somewhere if we keep our responses to each other relatively concise. I don't mind being concise. If you can be concise, that'd be helpful as well. The reason why I'm interested in what you're saying is because it directly contradicts your initial thesis, which is that science points towards a creator. You said biological evidence points towards a creator, and biology is a form of science. So the question I need to ask you is, do we need to trust the science or not? Because you're saying, well, the science points over here. But then when the science doesn't point over there, you're like, well, we can't trust science. I'm trying to figure out, do we trust the science or not?
To be quite frank, it's very subjective. One scientist looks at one piece of evidence and they see
Yes or
one
no?
thing. Another scientist looks at the same piece of evidence and sees a completely
Yes or
different
no?
thing.
Yes or no? Should we trust science?
To the degree that it can actually make an accurate prediction, there are some things it just can't predict.
Okay, so if sometimes it gets things wrong, we should not trust it.
No, what I'm saying is, what is the old adage? Trust but verify.
Sure. Okay, so
you can hear the thing
if-
and not.
if
Go ahead.
science shouldn't be trusted entirely because it gets things wrong, then what are we supposed to do with the holy book that gets things wrong as well?
That is an assumption that you make incorrectly.
Well, just pretend that it's true for a second. What should we do with a holy book that has problems, that says things that are not true?
I've read the Bible multiple times. There is not a single thing that is not true. There are things that maybe you don't understand.
Oh boy. Well, maybe you can help me understand. Maybe this is an understanding issue on my part, and you can help me out here. Have you read Jeremiah before, like the book of Jeremiah?
I have.
Okay. Do you know Jeremiah 7 pretty well? Because there's a claim in Jeremiah that simply just can't be true. It says, in the day that I brought your ancestors out of the land of Egypt, I did not speak to them or command them concerning burnt offerings and sacrifices. Is that a true statement?
It is a true statement in that God did not establish Mosaic law until after the tabernacle was built.
I said sacrifices, not Mosaic law. So 722 says, in the day that I brought your ancestors out of the land of Egypt, I did not speak to them or command them concerning burnt offerings. Now, you're suggesting that because you're going to say, well, the word day is a literal day, not like a time period. And either one of those interpretations is actually going to be a problem, because in that 24-hour period when they left Egypt, he literally commanded them concerning the Passover sacrifice, the lamb. So whether it's a time period, like a rough estimate time period, or whether it's the literal 24-hour day, they absolutely were commanded to give sacrifices the literal day they left Egypt.
That is not a sacrifice.
It is. You want me to show you in Exodus?
Foreshadowing of Jesus, not a burnt offering. A burnt offering, they would burn most of the animal, not consume it. Sometimes they would, if it was a peace offering. Go ahead.
It says burnt offerings and sacrifices. And in Exodus 12:27, it says, this is the Passover sacrifice to the Lord.
I mean, I have to look it up.
Man. All of a sudden, maybe the Bible does say something that's not true.
Just because you believe it to not be true does not mean that it's not true.
Well, then fill it in. Fix the problem for me.
Yeah.
You got the Holy Spirit.
Right, I'll look it up.
Jesus says that the Holy Spirit will guide you. Jeremiah 7:22.
Okay, let me pull it up here. Jeremiah 7:22.
Mm-hmm. Get it?
I'm almost there.
Mm-hmm.
For on the day that I brought your fathers out of the land of Egypt, I did not speak to them, nor did I command them concerning burnt offerings and sacrifices. But I explicitly commanded them, obey my voice, and I will be your God to you, and you will be my people. To me, what this is saying in context is that God wasn't concerned about the burnt offering. He was concerned about the people obeying him, and that's what the chapter is about, is their disobedience.
Well, I think the problem you have is it doesn't say that I didn't command them to be obedient. It says I didn't command them concerning burnt offerings and sacrifices, but he specifically did. It's the first thing that happened.
But you're taking half of a sentence, and you're trying to build a case out of half of a sentence. What does the other half of the sentence say?
I'm not building a case out of half a sentence. I'm saying there's a statement that's being made. That statement is either true or false. It just happens to be false.
Is context relevant?
Context is king.
Just like you were saying earlier, if you take something out of context,
not only is context king, I'm willing to bet you don't give a shit about context.
I'm betting he doesn't know.
Just because I have to look it up and don't remember it verbatim doesn't mean.
What are the Hebrew words used for burnt offering and sacrifice?
What is your question?
Never mind. I'm not asking. I thought it was muted.
So you don't care about context because you think Jesus fulfilled prophecies, but all of those prophecies are actually out of context quotation. So I don't want to hear any pearl clutching about context when you clearly don't care about context. I want to know about Jeremiah 7:22. It says
that's just an ad hoc attack based on absolutely nothing. I answered your question.
You want me to prove it?
Based on the context of what you're reading, you gave half of the sentence. The other half of the sentence was continued in verse 23.
I'll prove it for you. I'll prove it for you. In fact, I'll fix the problem that you couldn't fix in Jeremiah, and then I'll prove that you don't care about context. So in Jeremiah, it says, "Thus saith the Lord of hosts." So this is God speaking, the God of Israel. "Add your burnt offerings to your sacrifices and eat the flesh." Oh, the context is about burnt offerings and sacrifices. What about that? "For in the day that I brought your ancestors out of the land of Egypt, I did not speak to them or command them concerning burnt offerings and sacrifices." Boom. The context is, hey, I want some sacrifices. I need you to be obedient. Hey, back when they came out of Egypt, I didn't command them to give sacrifices. And you would be wrong.
Well, if you go back up to the beginning of the chapter, God is
Make it
excoriating
worse.
them for being disobedient, which is the
Disobedient
entire
in what?
context of the chapter.
Disobedient in what? Read the chapter. I love, just to be clear right now, Matthew, I love what you're about to say because you don't know how bad it's going to cook you. But keep going, because if you actually read the full context about what they're being disobedient in, it's going to make it worse.
Okay, in context, we'll skip down to, well, half of verse 2. Hear the words of Adonai, which is Lord, all of you of Judah that came to these gates to worship Adonai. Come. Good girl.
No, thanks. You're
Sorry.
not exciting. Oh,
The
shit, I'm not muted.
passage is about them giving sacrifices and offerings to Baal. Here you are, trusting in deceptive words to no avail. Will you steal, murder, commit adultery, swear falsely, and make offerings to Baal and go after other gods that you have not known? He's mad that they're giving sacrifices and offerings to another god. That's the context.
Yeah, exactly. They're being disobedient.
So the passage then is about offerings and sacrifices. That's the context. He's saying, I need you to give me the
No, it's
offerings and
about
sacrifices,
disobedience.
not Baal. Back when your ancestors came out of Egypt, I didn't command them giving about these offerings and sacrifices, but he did command them. So the whole passage is about offerings and sacrifices. This is what happens.
Let me give you a little bit of advice. 22.
Matthew, I want to give you a little bit of advice real quick.
22 is half of a
When you make definitive statements about the Bible, it helps if you have read the whole thing, or at least the chapter that you're talking about, right? So when you're telling me that Jeremiah 7 isn't actually about sacrifices and offerings, I'm going to call you a liar because I've read it and you haven't. And that's why when you say things about things you haven't read, then you just look silly.
What is the entire book about? What is the
entire
book
book
about?
of Jeremiah? The entire book of Jeremiah has many topics. Trying to synthesize it into one is stupid. But the most compelling arc in Jeremiah is about the exile that's looming starting in 605 BEC. That's irrelevant to what we're talking about. We're talking about a simple statement that is either true or false. And it's just false.
Once again, can't take a half of a sentence and build a case out of half of a sentence. Read the other half. I can
because it's a statement. It doesn't matter how many words. 23. It doesn't matter how much of the sentence you don't like. There's a statement that's made. If Matt said, I went to the barber shop to get my beard trimmed, and I parked in a handicap spot. Well, it might be true that the purpose was to talk about going to the barber shop, but there's still a statement in there. He said, I parked in a handicap spot. So did he or did he not? Now, I don't know how he parked. I'm just making a very simple example. You can have two ideas next to each other, and one of them still be a standalone statement that you can just ask, hey, is that statement true? That's what we're doing right now. God literally said, in the day that I brought your ancestors out of the land of Egypt, I did not speak to them or command them concerning burnt offerings and sacrifices. That statement is either true or it's not true. And it's just not true.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to continue defending the Bible, but you're going to.
Right. Well, I'll give you one. Cut
it to pieces, no matter what I do.
I absolutely going to.
I'm happy to go down that road, but my original premise was biology shows you that there is a creator.
No. You already said you don't trust science, so that's irrelevant now. So let me turn your attention real quick to Matthew chapter 2 and Hosea chapter 11, because I want to prove my earlier claim, which is I know you don't care about context. So in Matthew 2, when Jesus is taken into Egypt and comes back out of Egypt, it was to fulfill the words through the prophet, out of Egypt I have called my son. You're familiar with this passage, right?
I am.
Okay. Now, this is a quote from Hosea 11, specifically verse 1. And if you read Hosea, it's really interesting. The context has nothing to do with Jesus or a Messiah. It says, when Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. The more I called them, the more they went from me, and they kept sacrificing to the Baals and offering incense to idols. That's not a prophecy. That's just a retelling of a part of what happened during the Exodus. So given that the context in Hosea 11:1 has nothing to do with prophecy or Jesus, why would I believe Matthew's words when he says that Jesus is fulfilling a prophecy when he goes in and out of Egypt?
Well, your entire premise in this whole argument is faulty because you can't just take one section of the Bible, one verse, and make a big doctrine or make a big statement out of it. You're supposed to take the entire thing.
I have. Between you and me, I'm the only one that's read the entire Bible. So try to address the passage at hand. Hosea 11, verses 1 and 2. Is there a prophecy in there?
There is a prophecy. All of it is prophetic. The entire thing, the entire book is all prophetic.
So every word in the Bible is prophetic? Oh boy, you don't want to do that, do you?
Do you
when Lot was sexually assaulted by his daughters, was that prophetic?
Yes.
Was it prophetic when Lot was sexually assaulted by his daughters? Yes or no?
The premise is faulty.
I'm asking you a question. You said every word in the Bible is prophetic, so I'm asking you, what's the prophecy? Where's the fulfillment of the supposed prophecy of Lot having a non-consensual sex with his daughters? You don't just get to call something a prophecy because you want it to be. Prophecy is a clear form of speech.
Well, in John chapter 1, it says that Jesus was the Word made flesh.
So what? Why do I care about John? I'm asking you about Hosea.
The whole thing is him, and the whole thing
I'm asking you about
prophetic on
I'm asking you about Hosea, and no, that doesn't have anything to do with prophecy. So try this again. In Hosea, where can I find the words in there that would tell the reader that it's a prophetic text?
Point to anything that says this is a prophecy for the future. I mean,
there's a bunch of them.
God wrote.
It is Ezekiel chapter 12.
You're supposed to have wisdom and discernment when you read the thing.
You haven't read it, so we're not going to get there yet.
Reasons to pick it apart.
I know. Just try to pay attention. I know, like, you're feeling pinned down right now, and you want to squirm out, but don't worry. You're not like. You're going to be fine. Just try to actually answer some questions here. Is there any grammar or verbiage or anything in these two verses that would lead a reader to believe that it's a prophecy?
Not in and of the text.
Okay, and what's the context of these two verses?
Okay. Let me ask you about Psalm 22.
I need the answer first. What is the context?
Oh, you don't like that one.
I do
like that one.
I love Psalm 22. In fact, as soon as we're done with this, I will jump right into Psalm 22, and it's going to be even worse than this one. So again, what is the context of Hosea 11 verses 1 and 2?
Talking about calling the Israelites out of Egypt.
Okay, but does the context give you a reason to believe? Right? Yes, and that's what, if you read Exodus chapter 4, verse 22, he says that Israel is my firstborn son. That's why it says it again in Hosea. Hosea is aware of the legend. Okay, so what about the context of Hosea 11, 1 and 2 would make anyone believe that this is a prediction for the future?
There's not. And
there you go. So again, you don't care about context. You are now claiming that this is a future prophecy, even though the context of the passage has nothing to do with Jesus or a future prophecy. So I'm proving my point that you love context only when you think it's going to help you. The minute we turn to Jesus, you hate context. So now, what do you want to know about Psalm 22?
Is there a single thing in Psalm 22 that says this is prophetic?
Nope, and it's not.
Okay, so when it says that they cast lots for my garments, wait.
Mm-hmm.
Let me pull it up.
You almost got it. You almost got it.
Yeah, I'm not the greatest at quoting verbatim.
You don't have to quote it verbatim. We know what you're saying.
What I want, though.
Let me know when you get it.
Okay. I'm there. I'm trying to find that particular verse.
Mm-hmm. It's 16 and 17.
Okay.
Okay. Now, what part do you think is prophetic and why?
Okay, they pierced my hands and my feet.
So what? Well, also, by the way, it doesn't say pierced.
That's exactly
Your
what
Bible's
happened to
lying to you.
Jesus.
Well, your Bible's
Verse
lying to you. It
19,
doesn't say
they divide
pierced.
my... Go ahead.
The Hebrew word for pierced appears in Zechariah 12:10. It's dakar. It doesn't show up in Psalm 22. The word that is in most of the Hebrew texts and in the Aramaic texts is ka'ari, which means like a lion. It shows up in Isaiah 28 as well. This means like a lion at my hands and my feet. Now, if your Bible says pierced, it's because it's doing apologetics. There's an alternative rendering that comes from one of the ancient Greek recensions and one of the Dead Sea Scrolls that was found actually out in the desert, the Nahal Hever scroll. Now, that actually says something interesting. It says ka'aru. Unfortunately, ka'aru is not a real word in Hebrew. It's obviously a misspelling of ka'ari, where the final letter, the yod, accidentally got elongated, which is common. There are some people who have theorized that it was actually a misspelling of the word kara, conjugated as they will dig, or they dug. It's like digging in the ground. And so they, oh, dig sounds a lot like, I don't know, putting something through your hand. Let's just say pierced. That's actually really dishonest. The author could have said pierced. They didn't say pierced. The author literally said one of many things, but most likely like a lion at my hands and my feet. And even if it did say they pierced my hands and my feet, it still wouldn't be a prophecy.
Well, that is exactly what they do under Roman execution by crucifixion.
So what? So again, prophecy isn't just something. So what? Prophecy isn't just, hey, look, there's something over there that looks similar to something over there. That's not how prophecy works. Prophecy is a clear form of speech that you can actually test. That's why Deuteronomy 18, and in fact, Deuteronomy 13 allows you to test the words of the prophet to see if they're true, because if they're not true, you actually get to slay them. So what you're reading in Psalm 22 is an amazing poetic passage. In fact, it's one of my favorite poetic passages in the Hebrew Bible, because David has such exaggerated poetic words when he's struggling. But what he's describing is something that a lot of ancient people also said. In fact, it was common. If you were like captured in war, and you were going to, by your enemy, you're going to get hurt by your enemy, this is exactly what would play out. They would bind your hands and your feet, which is actually what a lot of the Greek texts say, which is why the NRSV says they bound my hands and my feet. And then they would take your clothing and divide your clothing and everything. And we see this in the Bible. We see this in the ancient Near East. One of my favorite examples, which was from way before Jesus, is a treaty from the Neo-Assyrian Empire. Esarhaddon made a treaty with Tyre. And in the curses section, if they break it, he says, may Astarte break your bow in the thick of battle and have you crouch at the feet of your enemies, and may a foreign enemy divide your belongings. And then we see the same thing in Antiquities of the Jews, where Josephus talks about the loss of the Amalekites to the Israelites. He says, after the battle, Moses went and sent people to gather the armor of those who had fled and those who had died. And we find more, like Hadrian, after the Bar Kokhba revolt, had people's clothing, captured people, had their clothing divided among people. This is a very common scene. So when David is describing this common scene of being captured in battle, which remember he spent his whole life in war, it's just him giving a really cool poetic, lamentation of his own struggling. It's not a prophecy just because it sounds similar to something later. In fact, if it's a prophecy, then it could be about Hadrian. It could be anybody who was captured in battle by the Romans. Hadrian was killed by the Romans. Hadrian was pierced. Bar Kokhba was captured by Hadrian. Bar Kokhba was murdered and pierced by Hadrian, and then he had his clothes divided, right? This is too generic, even if it was a prophecy, to be about Jesus, but it's just simply not a prophecy. A real prophecy would be like when God says, I will do a thing, and then he does the thing, and he tells you about that. Ezekiel 22 In fact, he says, "Mortal, what is this proverb of yours about the land of Israel that says the days are prolonged and every vision comes to nothing? Tell them therefore, thus the Lord, I will put an end to this proverb, and they shall use it no more as a proverb in Israel. Say to them that the days are near and the fulfillment of every vision, for there shall no longer be any false vision or flattering divination within the house of Israel. The Lord will speak the word that I will speak, and it will be fulfilled, no longer be delayed." And then the whole rest of the book is him saying, here's what I'm going to do. You know it's prophecy because he's telling you it's a prophecy. You don't have to guess. You don't have to turn to like these poetic passages and just say, oh, I kind of like that. Maybe it's a prophecy now.
Well, Jesus quotes the first line of it, my God, why have you forsaken me?
Why do I care about that?
Which was, that was how rabbis taught. They would bring out the first line of the passage, and that would bring to remembrance the rest of the passage.
That is a straight lie.
That is not a lie. Okay,
I'll pay you $100 if you can find me one quotation from a rabbi doing that.
See, you've heard things.
So when Jesus says, "My God, why have you forsaken me?"
You've heard things. I'm sorry, I'm going to talk now, and I'm going to talk over you. Yeah, it seems you've heard things and bought into them, and then you haven't actually bothered to look up to see if they're true. And so, while I will grant you that you know your Bible better than Pete Kegsbreath or Russell Brand, and perhaps better than me or a number of other people, when it comes to both the Bible and the history, you are crumbling a bit when you're interacting with someone who's actually spent the bulk of their life studying this in detail. And so you're spewing out things unnecessarily that aren't true, because even if that was the way that rabbis taught, which isn't the case, that still wouldn't make it a prophecy. And it's fine for somebody to reference a previous passage. That doesn't mean that it's prophetic. The author who put those words into Jesus's mouth may have been intentionally trying to reference Psalm 22. But you have no idea what Jesus said or didn't say. You have no idea the accuracy of any of this. And nothing about what you're saying shows that it's prophecy. That's Justin's point. You can't just say X is similar to Y, therefore prophecy, especially if you're going to Matthew, who spent so much time trying to make it look like Jesus fulfilled prophecy that he invented prophecy that wasn't there.
I mean, if the words of the Bible are to be believed, Jesus himself said, I must fulfill everything that was written about me in the prophets and the Psalms.
He didn't fulfill one prophecy, not even one.
So here in verse 9 where it says, rely on the Lord, let him deliver him, let him rescue him since he delights in him. Is that not what the Bible records the people saying? If you're really the Son of God, come down from there.
The people in David's time. Remember, Psalm 22 is not about Jesus. It's about David's own struggle. Everything that's happening to David right now is what you would expect of somebody who lived David's life. It's even similar to when he was chased out of the palace. When he gets chased out of the palace, we're talking like 2 Samuel, like chapter 15, 16, 17, so on and so forth. When his son Absalom chases him out of the palace, he leaves. He's depicted literally marching up a mountain barefoot. Don't even have shoes on. So everything in this passage is just David talking about himself. Just like there's a famous line that talks about a guy in Hades in the either the Iliad or the Odyssey, I forget which one. Talks about Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the endless hill, essentially, in Hades. And some people will say, "Listen, I'm bound to hell like Sisyphus." That doesn't mean it's a prophecy. Like David made a really cool lamentation. The lamentations are really popular in Jesus' time period because they were a people who suffered. They suffered a lot. So they read the lamentations of David and identified with it. And when Jesus was on the cross, he found his own suffering to be similar to a really popular lamentation of David. And so he quoted it. My suffering is just like this. He's identifying with the suffering of David. Doesn't make it a prophecy. And even if he thought it was a prophecy, he didn't say so. And it still wouldn't matter. If Jesus said with his own mouth directly, I'm fulfilling Psalm 22, then he's a liar. Because Psalm 22 is not a prophecy.
Everything that is described in Psalm 22 is happening to Jesus according to the Gospels. So
no, it's literally not.
I mean, Jesus himself said that he had to fulfill what was written about him in the prophets and the Psalms before he could be crucified.
Was wrong. And he's wrong. There's nothing in the Psalms about him.
I mean, this entire thing is everything that happened here in Psalm 22 was happening at the foot of the cross if the gospel is to be believed.
No, it actually didn't.
If you want to reject the whole thing on its face, well, that's up to you.
It actually didn't. Because if you read Psalm 22, the guy's asking for deliverance from that situation. Jesus was never delivered from that situation. Save me from the mouth of the lion, from the horns of the wild oxen. You have rescued me. Jesus was not rescued from that cross. He died on that cross and he's been dead ever since because he's a liar and a fraud. He's a false prophet.
Was David called a prophet by the Bible?
David was called a prophet by all kinds of people. That's irrelevant to whether or not this is a prophecy. David does utter prophecies. If you read all the Psalms, the ones that are attributed to David, there are moments where he does in fact utter prophecies. This is not one of them.
So the Roman soldier is gambling for his clothing.
What about it?
The fact that his hands and feet were pierced.
It doesn't say pierced. The text does not say pierced.
People are saying, come down from there.
Matthew, stop talking for a second. Will you please address the fact that the text doesn't say pierced?
Well,
why do you keep saying that? It doesn't say pierced.
And I mean, it is maybe a little bit of a stretch. Possibly. I mean,
it has nothing to do with the stretch.
12 times the word was used, it was dig. Two other times it was used to something else. Pierced.
The word pierced doesn't show up in the text anywhere, ever. Blue Letter Bible and Bible Hub, those are not your friends. They're just overlaying the Hebrew text with usually the King James or some like old, a public domain translation that's lying to you. So you can actually just click on the word and look it up in the dictionary. There's a lexicon tied to it. It's usually the Brown Driver Briggs lexicon. And it'll just tell you that it doesn't mean what you want it to.
Well, this is a very long entry, and maybe I'll read that later. That's going to take some time. But in any case, the word is translated dig 12 times, make 2 times, pierce 1 time, and open 1 time.
Doesn't matter how they translated it. The word does not mean pierced in any context.
Well, I mean, that's
whoever wrote down pierced is just lying to you. It's not my interpretation. They're lying to you.
It's wild. I sat here patiently listening to all this, and Justin's basically saying, "Hey, look, based on the best understanding of history and language, these claims are not true. That Jesus didn't fulfill prophecy. This doesn't say what you think it does." I'm going to take a slightly different tack just to see what kind of answer I get, and maybe it'll stop right here. I don't have a single word or action that I can reliably attribute to Jesus. I have stories that I cannot verify. Why should I believe that the stories are accurate? Because let's just go with the 4 Gospels. We don't know who wrote them. We don't have original copies. We don't have autographs. We have no way of investigating the claims that are in there. I mean, we don't have a time machine, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of God coming forward saying, yes, this particular book is accurate. We have copies of translations of copies of an oral tradition. Why should I consider the Gospel of Matthew correct in any sense?
Once again, it comes down to experience. If you've experienced the miraculous, then you're more likely to believe in the miraculous.
Yeah, I would agree with that, except that experiencing the miraculous doesn't tell me anything about Matthew. But also, I've never experienced anything miraculous. What have you experienced that is miraculous, and how does it confirm the Gospel of Matthew?
Probably the most miraculous thing was my wife's aunt was in the hospital dying during COVID. They're saying, get down here. You know, her organs are shutting down. It's not a matter of if, but when. Come say goodbye. And my wife starts praying for her. This is not a Christian woman that's in the hospital. She's a drug addict, and, you know, she's lived a hard lifestyle, and that's why she has a rare blood disease and her organs are shutting down. And my wife starts praying, and the aunt says, Jesus came into my room, said, you're rotten, but I still love you, turned around and left. And she began to get better, and she's still alive and kicking. So you tell me, how does something like that happen?
Oh, see, you ended with a logical fallacy, which is why I didn't want to engage with you on logical fallacies earlier. You shifted the burden of proof. Instead of demonstrating that what you saw was a miracle that came from the God that would affirm the Gospel of Matthew, you instead shifted the burden of proof to me to prove that it wasn't a miracle. How do you know it wasn't a spontaneous remission? How do you know she's telling the truth or accurate, or that she didn't hallucinate at Jesus? You have no way of demonstrating any of this. You didn't experience a miracle. You heard a story that you interpreted was miraculous and used that. I asked you what miraculous thing you had experienced, because I've watched people recover from things and watched the people around them say that was miraculous. And the real answer is we don't know what just happened or how. And you don't seem to know either, which is why you asked me to give an explanation for it. When I have no way to investigate it, I have no expertise in that area. And the right answer appears to be, we don't know how that happened, but you're pretending that you do know.
Well, you know, if it was one thing, then that would be one thing. But I've experienced many miraculous things.
Okay, so far you've given me none.
I've seen an angel, but I can't prove that to you. You can't experience what I experienced.
I asked you for one, and you gave me none. What miraculous thing can you relay to me that you have confirmed as a miracle?
Well, I would say the first thing that happened to me was when I was a kid. I was having bad nightmares after my parents got divorced. It went on for a couple of years. I had just accepted Jesus at the age of 8. So from 6 to 8, I was having these horrible recurring nightmares, and I had an angel come to my room, started telling me very affirming things like what my dad would say. My mom's not a Christian, but it looked like my mom, and this angel was saying things that are atypical for my mom. So I asked her the next day, did she come to my room? And she says no. And so I just kind of stored it up in my heart, but I stopped having those nightmares.
So you had a dream.
Okay. But, you know, like
how do you know? How can you demonstrate?
Nothing that I tell you can you confirm, right?
No, nothing can. You can't tell me anything that you can confirm. You cannot confirm that there was an angel. You can't confirm it to yourself or anybody else. How do you demonstrate to yourself that it was actually an angel? Because you just admitted that you did not. You thought you went to your mom and asked if she went to your room last night, which means there was doubt in your brain as to whether or not that was your mom or an angel. You're already admitting that you didn't have justification to reach the conclusion that you're trying to foster right now. And congrats. How old are you?
Well,
because I don't remember shit from when I was 8.
I'm 45. I remember shit from 3 years old.
Congratulations. How do you demonstrate that any of the stuff you remember is in fact accurate and miraculous? I'm betting you can't, because you failed now 2 times.
Well, how can anyone demonstrate to someone else?
That's not my problem. That's not my problem. Listen to me, Matthew. Matthew, stop. You just asked the perfect question. I don't think that anything supernatural has ever been demonstrated. I know of no way to demonstrate anything supernatural. I don't think supernatural claims are testable or falsifiable. Every single, in 20 plus years of doing this, every single attempt that anybody has ever made to claim a supernatural event, they have demonstrated that they have no method for demonstrating it, that they know of no method. Nobody has ever demonstrated any method to anyone else. It's all just the feels. And then when you point this out, they say what you say. which is, well, I can't prove it to you. Yeah, you can't prove it to me because you cannot prove it. You cannot show evidence. You cannot justify your conclusion rationally. Instead, you are going off the fields. That's not my problem. That's not the problem of science. It is a failing in your epistemology and in your attempt to justify the supernatural. You believe it, and that's good enough for you, but it shouldn't be, and it's definitely not good enough for anybody who cares about the truth. But you don't care about the truth because you're anti-science and support the Bible over truth anyway. It's embarrassing.
I agree with you. I can't.
Thank you. Then I have nothing else to say. Thank you for agreeing with me. I step back now.
Now, that's why I tried to frame the conversation in a different way, but you wouldn't let me do that.
You're a liar, sir.
About the Bible and
no, sir. No, sir. You're a liar. I would let you do it. I let you here. I'm going to mute you because I'm tired of you lying to me. When you say I wouldn't let you do it a certain way, I did not prevent you from defending your view the way you wanted to. I pointed out what wasn't going to be successful and what you did and didn't do. If you want to say, I believe the Bible because I believe the Bible, I fully acknowledged earlier, you can do that, but that doesn't make it rational. You called in to say biological evidence points toward a creator. And my answer to you is, no, it doesn't. Please demonstrate biological evidence points toward a creator. But what you're doing is you're not presenting biological evidence that points toward a creator. You are trying to do the tired old creationist argument of this seems unlikely or improbable without a creator. That's not how you demonstrate a creator. That's how you make a fallacious argument. You don't understand science. You don't understand what it is. You don't appreciate it. You toss it aside for the Bible. You don't understand logic or logical fallacies. There wasn't an ad hoc fallacy against you. That's not what that was. And now you're complaining that, oh, I didn't call in to discuss all this. I called in to point to biology. But why would you point to biological evidence when A, it can't do what you said it would do, what you think it would do, and B, you will dismiss it if the biological evidence disagrees with the Bible?
Am I allowed to speak now?
That's why I unmuted you. But if you're going to be a snarky, whiny little ass, no, you can't speak now. I'll speak again. I'll put you on mute again just because I find it fun and amusing. Because you've accused me of something that's not true. I despise dishonest people. I despise liars. I shut up for a long time and let Justin school you because he's great at it. And all of us have studied the Bible. I don't know it as well as maybe either of you. Who knows? I definitely don't know it as well as Justin. But what I do know is logic, philosophy, science, and sound epistemology. Epistemology, by the way, in case you weren't aware, is the study of how do we know what we know? It is basically, how can we justify? How can we warrant a belief? And when you have a good epistemology, the goal is to make sure we believe as many true things and as few false things as possible, to not fall into gullible things, to not say, well, can you prove that it was something else? That's a fallacy. Your answer that it was a miracle doesn't stand merely until somebody proves it's wrong. Your position in accepting the Bible doesn't stand as warranted and rational until there's absolute certainty that it's false. You have a flawed understanding of epistemology. You have reached conclusions without evidential warrant, which is why when I asked you what the warrant is, well, you won't let me say this, you won't let me say that, and you didn't let me finish this, and I only spoke for a minute, and then you made attacks on me. No, I assessed what you said. I evaluated your conflict between accepting the Bible and accepting science. I evaluated what you said about science as factually incorrect about both the findings of science and the procedures of science. I did the same thing with regard to logical fallacies. I've done nothing throughout this entire conversation but evaluate what you've said with regard to what actually is. And when you asked about the probability of DNA and RNA, which you have no expertise in, and you're citing science that you're going to dismiss if it disagrees with your Bible, which you already affirmed, I asked you one question. Let's see if you remember. Let's see. When you cited what was the probability, what question did I ask you?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I do. I asked you, what's the probability that a supernatural being exists that created life? And instead of giving me a probability, you started talking about experience. So you don't understand how probability works either. So when I ask you why we should believe something is supernatural, or what miracle, none of the things that you pointed to are confirmed miracles. And even if they were confirmed miracles, how would they confirm Matthew, which was my question? Why should we believe the Gospel of Matthew? And your answer seems to be you should believe the Gospel of Matthew because my wife's aunt, who was a terrible person, got a visit from Jesus who said, "You're shitty, but I'll save you anyway." I don't think he said shitty, but he might as well have. That didn't seem very Christian of him. Shouldn't he just have said, "I love you, I'm going to save you," instead of "you're a terrible person"? You have the weirdest take on things, and none of them are sound, reasonable justifications. That's why.
Can I give you sound and reasonable?
I doubt it, but I'll let you try. What is a sound reason for me to accept the Gospel of Matthew?
My initial premise was biology.
I'm sorry. I asked you what's a sound reason for me to accept the Gospel of Matthew. If you say I don't have one, I'll let you move on to biology.
From a logical standpoint, there is none.
Okay, thank you. What do you got about biology? Yes, I'm thrilled. Thank you.
Right,
I said thank you.
The best odds that I can find for a spontaneous formation of RNA are 10 to the 40th power. The best odds that I can find for the spontaneous formation of DNA, 10 to the 60th power. Anything 10 to the 50th power is considered a mathematical impossibility.
No, sir.
So when you have one thing
No,
that's
sir.
10 to the 40th.
No, sir. How many different, here's a deck of cards right here. It has 52 cards in it. How many possible combinations of this shuffled deck are there?
I forget the equation. It's like 52.
It's really easy. If there's 52
I
cards, it's 10 to the 52nd power. Is it impossible for me to shuffle any of the combinations from this deck? No. So when you talk about mathematical impossibilities, you're actually misrepresenting the facts, but you're also ignoring what are the odds, setting aside the proposed odds, which you didn't calculate, you don't understand, and you are reporting from creationist sources. What are the odds that a supernatural being exists that created life?
From a logical standpoint, there is zero.
Okay, so I don't agree with you. So first of all, you should stop saying from a logical standpoint because you don't understand logic. But also, I don't think it's zero. I think it is undefined. I think there is no way to demonstrate or determine what the odds are of a God. And if there's no way to determine, or if it's zero, then when you compare 10 to the 40th to undetermined, you can't tell which one is more likely. And if you compare 10 to the 40th to zero, then 10 to the 40th is more likely, right?
Okay, so first of all, you said I'm taking creationist sources. I gave that. I cited you those numbers from.
Right. Is that right? Is 10 to the 40th more likely than zero?
It is.
Then by your own numbers, you have demonstrated that the biology is more likely than your numbers for God. So you cannot say that we did not let you present your biology argument. All you can say is we exposed that even with all of your own criteria, You're wrong. And you're still accepting the God story over the science story. And you thought you could demonstrate it with probability until you got caught with the one thing you hadn't considered, which is what's the odds of God? Because you think the odds of God are actually one, don't you?
From my standpoint, it's 100%.
Exactly. That's literally what I just. That's literally what I just asked you. The probability of God is one, according to you, and that's a position for which you have no evidence and no way to support it. So what you're admitting is that you are biased. I'm sorry. I'm still talking. What you are admitting is that you are biased in a particular direction, fully 100%, without any evidence to support it, and in the face of evidence to the contrary, even using your own numbers. I'm sorry, Matthew. I'm not coming up with some ad hoc thing. You have demonstrated that you do not know or understand the science, the logic, the math, the probability, or warranted reasonable justification for a belief. There's no reason anybody should pay attention to what you say. You have made yourself a cartoon that says, I'm going to believe what I believe because of my experience, and science be damned, math be damned, even the math I know. That's where you're at right now. And I hope you find a way out of it, but there's no reason anybody should consider what you say of any value.
Well, you can Google these things. I got those numbers from.
I don't need to Google things. You need to fucking Google things. Okay. We're going to say goodbye, Matthew, because Google will tell you things that you don't want to know. Say goodbye.
Well, I just Googled 1 in 10 to the 60th power.
Say goodbye. Say goodbye. Hey, Google, what are the odds of God? But do it on somebody else's time. Oh. She cited, my Google device cited, Google, stop. She cited a 67% from a theistic source. Nice.
I suspect the odds by the theistic source didn't take into account what they found on the asteroid, was it Ryugu or Ryugu? They found all of the necessary components for RNA. All the required nucleobases were there on the asteroid. So, like, obviously it's happening, not even just on Earth, but in other locations out there.
That's God too. God has taken the building blocks of life and he's putting on asteroids and having them float around the universe. I mean, it's clear. All right. We have one more theist, and I don't want to make them wait any longer because they've been on hold for 45 minutes. So Christopher in Kentucky, welcome to the show. Pronouns are he, him. Christopher wants to make an argument in favor for evidence for God. So awesome. Welcome.
Hello. Nice to meet both of y'all. I've been listening to the show for a while. I will say it is a bit unfortunate that the whole, this whole creationist nonsense has to get talked about with these sorts of arguments. I am more interested in making a philosophical argument more than a scientific one. But okay. I do, if you don't mind, would you mind if I quickly went over you said something about the falsifiability of the supernatural and how you don't think that you can falsify the supernatural or demonstrate it in any sort of way. Is that correct assessment of what you said?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I agree with you, but I guess just as a kind of side note. Don't you think that that's kind of a category error? Like hypothetically, let's say there is.
No, there's no category error. There's no category error. You just agreed with me. It's not the fault. Oh my God. Asserting that there's supernatural causation that you cannot demonstrate is not a category error.
Mm-hmm.
How do you demonstrate?
I'm not trying to say that it's not a category.
How do you demonstrate the supernatural causation?
I don't think you can. And I want to clarify.
Then we agree. Then, oh my God. Never mind. Go ahead. Do whatever you want. I no longer give a fuck.
I, in general, consider myself a philosophical naturalist. I
didn't ask you. I didn't ask you about that. You called in to make an argument in favor for God, and then you decided to tell me how much you agree with me about something that you think is a category error. Prove God or piss off.
No, Okay, fine. I'll skip this part. I think it's
Thank you.
interesting for a discussion of God, but anyway.
I don't.
So
I'm fucking exhausted from what you think is interesting. Get to it.
Okay. I apologize. I'm not okay.
I don't. Okay, I'm going to mute you here. I'm going to mute you. Listen to me, Christopher. I've been on this show for 3 fucking hours today, listening to really, really, really bad arguments. I don't need a Philbro coming in describing their personal views or talking about category errors at all. I'm completely fucking done with that. You called in to make a philosophical argument in favor of God. I would like for you to make that argument so that we can accept it or reject it or think about it further. I don't need apologies. I don't need your life story. I don't need whether or not you're a philosophical naturalist. I need you to do what the fuck you said you'd do to call screener, which is you're here to make an argument in favor of evidence for God. I'm going to unmute you now. Please do that.
Okay, I'm going to do that.
No, no. We're going to mute you again, and I'm going to try again. I don't need a preamble. I don't need you to tell me what you're going to do. I just need you to do it. When I unmute you, you need to say, my argument for the for evidence for God is this, and then give it. That's it.
Okay. My argument starts with the principle of sufficient reason, namely that no fact can be real or actual, and no proposition can be considered true without there being a sufficient reason why it is so or not so. So it's the principle of sufficient reason. You're familiar. I won't belabor the point. The second part is the failure of contingent explanations. Most things we encounter in the universe are contingent. Their existence is dependent on something else. You know about the chain of dependency and things like that. So you suppose you explain the existence of a tree by pointing to a seed. You then explain the seed. You have to go back in time. Even if this chain goes back forever, the entire collection of trees and seeds still hasn't been explained. You've explained why this tree exists, but not why trees exist at all. My argument is that the universe is just a collection of all contingent things, stars, atoms, dark matter, the process of evolution, whatever. And since every part of the universe is contingent, the universe itself is contingent. It requires an explanation that sits outside the set of contingent things. And my last part of my argument, or rather my penultimate part of my argument, is that I think that it can be deduced that there is a necessary being of some kind that is the primary explanation for all this. Namely, you need some entity or being because you need something at the start of this chain that is self-explanatory. Its essence is to exist. It doesn't happen to exist. It cannot not exist. So in order to prevent an infinite chain of contingency, you need a first non-contingent thing, being, or entity. Because it causes all space and time, it would have to exist separate from those things. It would have to be immaterial and simple, like it couldn't be made of atoms or components because those kind of have a prior. And so basically it's an argument against infinite regress. My argument is that some entity or being or thing must exist as the primary source of all existence, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, or else you just have an infinite chain of causes, which kind of breaks the principle of sufficient reason in my view.
Okay. What's your justification for saying it's a being and not a thing?
A being as in like how God is typically like associated, like an actual like supernatural being, right?
No, you said you need a being or thing, and I'm asking you, what's the justification for saying it is a being, a conscious agent?
I think the best argument that I could have for that particular part is it seems that throughout human history, humans have had a sense that like the primary cause is an agent in some way. It is being. Now that is not like evidence. That's just like an analysis of human experience throughout history. It's obviously not universal to every single human, but to me, that is indicative that whether it has an evolutionary cause and is irrational or it's not, there seems to be an intuition that humans have or an association with like causes ultimately being conscious in some way. And,
Okay.
I think when doing things like science or philosophy or reason, the foundational element of that is the human experience. And so, yes, scientific, the scientific endeavor requires.
I'm sorry, Christopher. I'm sorry, Christopher. We're done. You don't get to say that the foundational thing of science is human experience, because one of the fundamental principles of science is to eliminate human experience and bias as much as possible, to engage in the sort of peer review and replication, duplication of the actual observed facts. You also cannot make a case that because humans have always intuited a particular agency or causes, that this is a good reason to think that the ultimate cause is an agent. So you went from, here's a philosophical argument that we shouldn't have an infinite regress and that everything is content. This is a contingency, an argument from contingency. I have an entire video on my channel which demolishes arguments from contingency. But the short version is this. I have no reason to think that some version of a universe has not always existed. What we talk about within the expanse of the universe that we experience is only investigatable up into one Planck unit time from when the expansion started. Prior to that, there apparently, in most of the models, time began, so you can't even really talk about prior to that, but in a meta sense, you could talk about prior to that. We don't know, and we don't have any way of investigating. We don't know that this thing didn't exist forever. So even with your contingent argument, I find it wrong to say that because each individual thing within the universe is contingent on something, that the whole is contingent. That is bizarre, because I think that falls apart when you want to like to view the universe as contingent on a God, but that God isn't contingent. The fact that the parts of something are one thing doesn't mean that the whole is also that one thing. And when we're talking specifically about our universe, we only have the one to investigate, and we have no way of knowing what happened prior to that expansion beginning. So it may just be the case that something, which would be the singularity mathematically that we would point to of where the expansion began, either always existed, or something that we don't know or understand generated that, or is that. However, there's no reason to think that in any way is a being, or that the universe is a conscious being. And the fact that you left the realm of a regress of contingent things, which, by the way, we can't just do a regress anyway. But the fact that you left the realm of a regress of contingent things and went to human intuition and what humans have always suspected, demonstrates the flaw in trying to turn this unknown, uninvestigatable, extant thing into a being.
There's two things I'll say in response, and I think there's elements in which you're right. But the one thing I'll say first in terms of contingency itself, like, yes, you're right. We don't know. We have no reason necessarily to suspect that the universe may not have existed infinitely in the past and may not exist in some form infinitely in the future. I'm not arguing in like a time sense, like in a linear cause and effect sense. I'm talking about in a pure existence sense. So the universe, like, fundamentally does exist. And you can say, oh, maybe the universe fundamentally exists non-contingently, but then you are like kind of committing to the idea that there are different kinds of things while still being composed of the same thing. So if you say that the universe in and of itself is a non-contingent thing and breaks the principle of sufficient reason, my issue with that is that you would need to like demonstrate that there is like some like physical law or something like that would make something as a whole that otherwise upholds the principle of sufficient reason to violate it when taken as a whole. And so to me that is.
I'm sorry, does God violate the principle of sufficient reason?
If God, as we're talking about it, is like something that is like outside the universe and outside our traditional understanding of cause and effect, which the universe wouldn't be, because we can examine the universe, we know what the universe is.
You don't know what it is prior to the Planck time. Like, does God violate the principle of sufficient reason?
in the sense that God doesn't have a cause, yes. Like I'm treating God
Okay.
as like
So you're
it-
objecting. So right now, no. Right now we're at a spot where you've already acknowledged that there's no reason to suspect that the universe might not have existed infinitely. We cannot determine
Yes.
prior to the Planck time whether or not that whatever that was in fact contingent or not contingent, and you are proposing a being that violates the principle of sufficient reason while objecting to my speculation that you can't disprove that there's not a universe that violates the principle of sufficient reason. Your argument is defeated,
Well,
sir.
Well, if you want to say that, I'm not saying your argument is impossible. That's not what I'm saying. I
don't
like,
care if it's possible or not. I'm saying by your own words, your objection to my proposed solution as a possibility is also an objection to your proposed solution as a possibility. And all I'm doing is what you've admitted is that there's no reason to suspect that the universe didn't exist in some form infinitely and non-contingently.
I mean, it works fine. My issue is that just becomes like a non-being God, and by that what I mean is that to say that like
I'm not. No.
Let me make the
no.
argument.
I'm not going to let you
think I can
finish.
convince
I'm
you.
not going to stop. It's 9:15.
Okay.
I don't need you to try to rehabilitate your failed argument. You need to go off and you need to go off and rehabilitate your failed argument somewhere else and not on my time with an argument that I have rebutted thoroughly and repeatedly.
Okay. Well, it's a different argument, but if you don't want to, never mind. If you don't want to hear
another
it, then I can't change your mind.
Call back another time and engage with that. Because the one you presented, your own objection to my solution, you agreed with me that there's no reason to suspect the universe didn't exist infinitely, and that there's no reason to determine that the universe isn't the non-contingent thing. And you're just saying that's a God, but not an agent. Well, I'll tell you this. I'm not interested in people who are trying to argue for a non-agent God. That is playing with language and a sense of sophistry that I couldn't give a fuck about. I care about the gods that people are proposing that are agents, that have some desire, that created things with intent and purpose, that have some meaning or some purpose or goal for the lives, or some rules that we care about. If you believe that the universe is God, cool. That's your problem. I find it to be a language manipulation that is completely useless. I'm not interested in useless gods. If there's a God that doesn't interact with reality in any detectable way, that God's existence or non-existence is completely irrelevant to everything in reality. Why should I care about, here the universe existed and I'm going to call it God? Great. Good for you. We don't need to waste any more time on it.
Right. And, if I was just making that kind of like
No, when I say we don't need to waste any more time on it and you say right, that means we're done. All right, we've got super chat. Oh, wait, no, there's one more. We will begin to super chats after this last call.
I'm baffled by the amount of people that will call in to you, Matt, and give arguments that haven't worked in hundreds and hundreds, like 1,000 years, 2,000 years. Like the argument from contingency is like the most base level bad argument, and they have to know that you've heard it. Like it's crazy that they're trying it on you.
Yeah, but I'm fine with that. At least, and I'll say this. Thank you for calling. Thank you for presenting an actual argument. Yes, it's one we've dealt with many times. And thank you for being honest and agreeing, both with what I said before and with the fact that you don't have a justification beyond human intuition for determining it's a being. And when you acknowledge that the universe fits the criteria, you're like, well, that's just a non-being God. No. I disagree with that, because all we're saying is, what's the foundation? What's the thing that existed forever? In one case, you've got the universe. In one case, you've added something to the universe. And I would say that violates Occam's razor, even though that's not some hard and fast rule. Maybe something does violate Occam's razor, just like you're proposing maybe something does violate the principle of sufficient reason. That's all fine. I appreciate all of that. It's just late. And I don't need you to start a second argument. Call back and we'll do another second argument. In this case, maybe a third or fourth. But we've got Robert from Ohio, who's an atheist, who's calling to talk about maybe putting the Bible as required learning in schools. Hi, Robert. How are you?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Longtime fan of the show, especially you, Matt. Justin, I'm just now seeing you for the first time, but you're a breath of fresh air with your knowledge of the Bible, obviously.
Thanks.
I think you kind of demonstrated my point all night long.
Okay, what's your point?
Did I lose you? That the Bible should be maybe required learning in our school system.
I completely disagree. So I'm really sad that I demonstrated a point I disagree with.
I understand what you're saying. I was there for a long time, but seeing how well you guys are able to debunk things. And there was a lot of things that you guys were talking about that I was thinking to myself, you know, with the guy who wanted to talk about science. I wish you guys could have talked about the, the mold remedy in Leviticus.
Oh,
that talks about killing 2 doves and all this. And,
yeah,
you know, like,
Leviticus
there's
14.
no science behind that. And it's obvious.
Yeah.
And if we were taught that at a younger age, then perhaps we could actually, you know, garner some more rational minds on the subject.
Yeah, you can do that without teaching the Bible. What you do is you teach people how to evaluate claims and find evidence for them or not.
Yeah, but at the same time, this epidemic is not getting any better. And the only thing that led me
What
to
epidemic?
become a real true, you know, skeptical atheist, I guess, you know, what drove my skepticism was reading it, actually reading it. And I mean, we require, like, you know, a little bit of Greek mythology and stuff like that in school anyways.
No, we don't.
And so, well, yeah, I
No,
had to
we
read
don't.
the Iliad and the Odyssey.
As far as I'm aware, those are all electives. From a literary standpoint, we can include many different books. You're talking about teaching the
in my day, it wasn't an elective, but I didn't have a choice on the matter. I was like,
that's
you know,
the Iliad and the
grade,
Odyssey aren't fucking religious books.
I know, that's my point.
No. How is it that
that
every time I disagree with you, you say that's your point? I'm fucking flummoxed at this point.
Because I want to teach the Bible from a practical point that it has a lot of flaws. You know, just like the whole mold cure, or what was the other one? You were talking about God
Robert,
and
Robert,
Satan earlier, and I was kind of hoping that you would mention contradiction.
Robert. Should we also teach the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita and every other holy book on the planet?
No, maybe, but I'm saying maybe we shouldn't give a crash course on every single one of them.
No, we shouldn't.
It wouldn't be that bad of an idea.
Because we have important. Oh my God! Never mind, Robert. I don't fucking care. Say goodnight.
De-radicalize people.
Say goodnight.
Well, it was just a thought that.
Goodbye. I offered you a chance to say goodnight, Robert. Here's the thing. I can't get a word in, and you are dead set because you are bitter. I get that. You are bitter that you bought into bullshit, and now you found your way out. And you, like many other people, desperately want to say, hey, why don't we put this in schools? I'll explain to you why in detail we should not put that in school. We should neither have the teaching of religious texts as the religion they are, or the teaching of religious texts as a way of debunking them for a number of different reasons. One, we have better things to teach. We need to teach reading, writing, arithmetic, We need to teach history. We need to teach epistemology. We need to be teaching critical thinking. And if you teach critical thinking and epistemology, you solve all of those problems you want without having an entire course on everything wrong with the Bible, an entire course with everything that's wrong with the Quran, which is why when I asked you if we should be teaching all those other ones, you intuitively said, oh, yeah, no, hang on. We can't have 9,300, different religious courses in our schools, because that's not the purpose of our schools. It's not the job of the government or anybody else to say, let me run around debunking all these religions. We also don't debunk psychics in school. We don't debunk tarot. We don't debunk astrology. Should we? Kind of, in the sense that we could teach critical thinking courses to teach people how to evaluate claims, and we can teach them good information about common scams. When I was in school, I don't know if they still have stuff like this, but we had home economics and all kinds of things that, and we had in like second grade or whatever, we had to learn how to balance a checkbook. We learned about all kinds of different stuff like that. We need to bring back those courses and civics courses, and we need to teach people how to think and how to find the information, because they're getting ready to step into a world where the next generation of kids is not going to know how to find any answer without asking an AI chatbot. And let me explain to you what AI chatbots, the LLMs, actually are. They are the functional equivalent of taking the comment section from a forum and saying, hey, we'll just pretend like the wisdom of the crowds apply everywhere. So, for example, if you're not familiar with the wisdom of the crowd, if you take a jar full of gumballs and you ask people, guess how many gumballs are in there? And you ask one person, it could be anywhere on the map. But if you ask 100,000 people to estimate how many are in there, you're going to get a largely bell curve distribution of answers that is going to center on the correct answer. That's the sort of thing we talk about with the wisdom of crowds. You get the same sort of distribution that you get when you drop beads into my Galton box here. See how that distributes according to normal distribution? That's what you get with a large enough sample set. So the wisdom of the crowds can be useful for something like that as an estimate, as an approximation, but it needs a large data set. If you ask an LLM something about my nephew, I doubt there's a lot of information or discussion about my nephew. And so what those LLMs will do is guess. They will hallucinate. They will make stuff up. And we are raising an entire multiple future generations where the only thing they're going to know how to do is ask a computer to guess. I don't need a Bible course. I don't need to debunk the Bible in grade school. I need to teach people how to debunk the Bible themselves. I need to teach people how to look at this stuff. There's plenty of content out there. Direct them to the content. I need Justin's cheat sheets and my cheat sheets and the cheat sheets of everybody who debate this stuff all the time. There needs to be, oh wait, there was a wiki for that. It was called ironcharts.org. I know because I built it, but we shut it down for a number of different reasons, not the least of which is I don't have time. That's what we need to teach. I get that you're frustrated and you are passionate and you are pissed off and you really want this. But the fact that you immediately acknowledge we shouldn't do it for the Quran, we shouldn't do it for the Bhagavad Gita, we shouldn't do it for every religious text, shows that you fundamentally understand the problem. And this is just a personal thing for you. You, like so many of us, want to desperately help people not buy into the same bullshit that we bought into. And that is perfectly laudable. But I disagree with your suggestion for those reasons. And it's really weird that every time I disagreed, it was like, oh, you're making my point or whatever, which tells me that I'm not sure you were paying attention. So it's much better for me to pause, do it without you here. I know you waited on hold for 3 hours. That's amazing. And I'm sorry you just got hung up on, but I could not get a word in to explain why this was a well-intentioned waste of time. An incredibly well-intentioned, complete waste of time. Now we got super chats to go to. So the lovely and talented Arden Hart, I first of all have not made any announcements about anything. I'm going to reread the announcement from earlier about the American Empathy Project. And if I haven't just thrown a curveball to our producer, you might see some graphics. But because we're working with the American Humanist Association on this, I'm going to read the same announcement that I read at the beginning of the show. The American Empathy Project is a micro-grant mutual aid program of the American Humanist Association. Selected grantees have received $1,000 from the AHA for their chosen project, along with planning support and additional project resources. Why do we need this? We're living through a crisis of cruelty with an administration that threatens our neighbors' safety, leaves kids hungry, diminishes our collective humanity, and seeks to divide us with fear and hate. But we will not let them win. There's hope in each other and in ourselves. We need you to be a leader, and the AHA is here to help. Organizers will be bringing their communities together across the country on May 2nd, 2026. That is a couple of days away. This is why I'm reminding you. Please go look into this. They're going to be bringing together across the country to fund community-wide service projects such as food drives, clothes drives for trans youth, supply drives for immigrant families, community environmental cleanups, and more. Please take a moment after the show's over, go to AmericanEmpathyProject.org to see what events are happening near you. And if there are not events happening near you, please reach out to American Humanist Association and the American Empathy Project to let them know that you support what they're doing and that you would be interested in these projects in an area near you. The thing we need more of isn't another cishet white dude arguing religion. We need more volunteers who genuinely care about helping people in a practical sense and not just in an intellectual pursuit. Critical thinking, skepticism, sound epistemology, understanding religion and its impact, understanding psychology, all of those things are incredibly valuable, and they go to the whole package of a robust, healthy mind. But so does food, so does clothing, so does safety, so does comfort, so does love and empathy. And while I'm here every week doing some of those things, I need to be out there, along with all the rest of you, doing those other practical things too. Please look into this and try to help. Thank you. And now we'll read your super chats. Justin, you want to start us?
Yeah, Greg, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. It says, I'm hopeful for the results of the 26 and the 28, but what scares me is another charlatan will come along in 30 and the fools will vote for them. But first, steps first. I get you. And I thought after Bush we wouldn't fall for that nonsense again, and here we are.
Yeah. Thanks a ton, Greg. It's good to see you as always. By the way, I'm in the YouTube with the vertical video, so I've been in with the vertical chat only. So I don't know what anybody's saying or how many people are involved over on the horizontal one. But we've had a good collection of callers tonight because of the vertical stream, and a good number of people engaging over there. Although there were a couple of people whose head I'm definitely living in rent free. And I'd like to say, go watch Donald in Math Magic Land. And when they go into Donald's brain and they start sweeping all the dust out and getting rid of the cobwebs and the fallacies and the strange thoughts and all that, please do that, because it's getting really cramped in here. 2222 from William Rogers. Thank you so much. Christians, atheists have no morals because morals come from God. Also Christians, Abraham was righteous to try and off Isaac because God said so. Yeah, I won't go through my standard take on the Binding of Isaac story. I will say that I haven't played Binding of Isaac the game in probably a year or so now. Maybe I'll pick it back up again.
And then from the atheist mechanic, I'm happy to be here amongst friends that this administration considers domestic terrorists the only ones that fit that really description live in the White House. Yeah, that's accurate.
I think it's the only ones that really fit that description live in the White House. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
$10 from Bryce Aroni. Thank you. Justin, 1 Corinthians 15, 3-5. Paul talks about Christ dying for our sins and being raised on the third day according to the scriptures. What the fuck is he talking about? What scripture is he pointing to?
This has actually been a pretty classic debated topic, and there isn't one. He doesn't point to any scriptures, but it's generally assumed that he has in mind some of the same out of context passages, say that that the New Testament authors are writing about. It's a shame that he doesn't list them because nothing talks about rising on the third day. Apologists will sometimes say, "Well, it was actually like a scripture that was based on Jesus' saying, like predicting his own death and resurrection," but that can't be the case.
Somebody in chat had asked a question because of something I said, and I'd like for you to answer it because if I'm wrong, I definitely want to be corrected, and your correction will mean more than random caller.
Sure.
I talked about how Matthew was so eager to fulfill prophecy, and he says that phrase over time, so that it may be fulfilled, so that it may be fulfilled, that he actually invented prophecies. Is that accurate, or am I misrepresenting the Jeremiah misappropriation, or is there one he just invented that we can't find?
So there's a couple issues with Matthew. He's doing a couple things. He's doing like the Dead Sea Scroll community and the people at Qumran. They did this thing where they would like repurpose scripture, and even in some of the Talmudic writings, you see this kind of creeping in where people will be like, "Let's ignore the context. This is clearly from God. We need to find the hidden secrets." So they'll go in and find like hidden secrets that aren't really prophecies and say, this is actually revelation that's been hidden here for our time. But what we find in Matthew 27, like when he accidentally attributes it to Jeremiah, this appears for all intents and purposes to probably just be a mistake or a really sloppy form of midrash. So in a number of like commentaries, they'll say like it might be that Matthew's doing midrash where he's saying that there's these passages in the Hebrew Bible that kind of allude to this thing. But I don't find that to be compelling because he literally quotes it and he just quotes the wrong guy. And so to me, I just find that particular situation to be a bit of a blunder.
I will retract my assertion that Matthew invented a prophecy that doesn't exist.
He does,
though. Maybe. He does?
Just not that one. Yeah, the prophecy that he invents is when it says that he will be called a Nazarene because he moved to Nazareth, which is a big screw up on Isaiah 11, where there's no prophecy there in Isaiah 11. It just says that the branch will be from David, and Netzer in Hebrew for branch. He's saying, it's a play on words, Nazareth and branch. It's a prophecy now. That's entirely fabricated.
Okay. So I wasn't wrong. I just still probably should study up a bit because it's been years since I went through all that stuff. Cool. Thank you. $10 from Sprawley. Thanks to the producer for the name tag that briefly showed for Adam. Oh, I missed it, but Arden will tell me about it later.
It just said, Jesus fucking Christ, it's Adam from Croatia.
Oh, that's too good.
And $10 from our friend Dust Frame says, if there's a God, he can get me an espresso martini and piss off.
I always said, if there's a God, I didn't always say this, I guess it's relative, but I've said before, if there is a God, if he's unwilling to give me 5 minutes of his time, I'm unwilling to give him any of mine. $10 from the Atheist Mechanic. I said this in Chris Mallard's show this morning, but God has a higher kill count than Satan. Satan wasn't the one commanding genocides or flooding the earth. Yeah, that's why I was specifically talking about innocence, because, so let me put my Christian hat back on. My Christian hat, I would have said God never kills an innocent because none of us are innocent. We, for all have sinned, blah, blah, blah. But that's also my way of testing where the caller is in their knowledge of different doctrinal things. Sometimes when I ask a question that some of you out there are like, that's wrong. I know it's wrong. I'm trying to see if they know it's wrong. And so when you go through, can you go back to that super chat? When you go through the super chat, or when you go through the questions like that with a kill count, I'm trying to figure it out, because I would say, from my standpoint, God kills more people than Satan. But I add in innocent so that I can see if they're going to acknowledge that all of those babies that were drowned in the Great Flood could be viewed reasonably as innocents and could be viewed reasonably as an unjust murder. And because that lets me know, do they think God is above the law, or that we are also unjust, or will they do what some of them do, which is, hey, from our perspective, those babies died, but from God's perspective, he just brought them up to heaven to be with him. And then we get to discuss what's the criteria for salvation and the age of, reason, and boom, boom, boom. Anyway, thank you.
We've got 10 from Space Barbarian. Says tornadoes and hurricanes are examples of order arising from disorder. Even Newtonian physics has a singularity. Point masses have infinite gravity at a distance of 0. Spheres don't have that problem. You might be talking science slightly above my head, but yeah, I mean, to be fair, that would be order. A cyclone would be a form of order.
Yeah, I tend to go with sand dunes, but because even so here, I should do this the next time somebody asks me if order can arrive from chaos.
Right.
That's standard distribution. It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible for me to shift that to the side by tilting it. But as long as it's level, no individual ball in here is saying, ooh, I need to go here in order to create this standard distribution. This is the demonstration right in your face that I forgot I had, and would have probably forgot I had if I hadn't thought of it for something else. Anyway, $10 from Sensibility. The devil was framed. What a wonderful barbecue. Love you, gentlemen. Hashtag rock hard for Doug. Hashtag Hail Nero. I switched headphones just because after 3+ hours, those earbuds start to dig into the top of my ear.
Yeah, I'm with you, actually. 10 from our friend Connor. Good to see you. Says, hey, Justin. And also, Matt, sorry, it's off topic, but Crochet Rocky left on the porch. Oh, I did get the package, by the way. Despite putting your P.O. box number on the package, let me know if you received it next live. Slante, I did get a notification from UPS. It should be arrived. Thank you, though.
$100 from Genji. Wow, that is incredibly generous. Thank you. Justin, cook. Yeah. I agree.
And 20 from our friend Birdkeeper Mikey. Matt, I am a current nuke and leader in the Navy. How hard was it for you when you were in the Navy to not be able to speak out on these things due to military stuff? It's hard to keep my mouth shut. Props to you guys. Rock out for Doug and gay for Justin. Thank you. Good question.
It wasn't difficult because I was a Christian while I was in. I'm sorry. I just got to notice that my prescriptions, they attempted to deliver them, but there was nobody here to pick it up. And I'm like, we've literally been here all day. And so they returned them to the pharmacy. They probably rang the doorbell and we shouldn't hear them because they came after the show started. So probably still my bad. $10 from Blue Lear. Hey, Matt, it was really cool seeing you in Arden doing what y'all love at the Herp Show. Yes, thank you. People's eyes light up when they hold those snakes. It was nice to have met y'all. I appreciate that very much. We had a good time. I mean, all things considered, those events can be stressful and they're a lot of work, and we don't necessarily make a bunch of money at them. But we do this just because we love the animals, we love the science, and I have given away snakes for free at those things. My favorite thing is when some kid comes up who's been desperately saving and begging for permission to get their first snake, and if they have saved up and they're not particularly picky about what they get, if they make me a promise that they will get the proper enclosure, that they will study exactly how to care for the animal, and that they will do the most important thing you can do for a new snake, most new snakes, is buy an actual thermostat to monitor the heating element, I will give them a snake for free. Because I look at myself like a drug dealer. Once they get one snake, they're going to want 100 more, and I was the guy that gave them the first one. So, but it's
That's
also, I'm trying to inspire, passion for them.
We got 10 from Weston Campbell. Says, wow, Matthew, someone was in a hospital and recovered. Mary Teresa was made a saint by someone claiming their cancer was cured by praying to her. Doctors can fix things, not magic space wizards. And I forget what it is. There are some cancers that have a pretty high rate of spontaneous remission as well. And like, it's just one of those things. Like I could pray to a rock every time somebody gets cancer, and I'll have the same rate of healing as Yahweh.
$10 from Weston Campbell. I scrolled onto Justin's live before he hosted on the line. I find myself in the same situation, scrolling onto him of just listening to someone who knows far more about these subjects. Matt, you're gay, homie. True? Fair?
And 10 from Joshua Everett. Good to see you. It says, when you're following an angel, does it mean you have to throw your body off a building? Somewhere they're meeting on a pinhead, calling you an angel, calling you the nicest things. And Joshua, this sounds like it's a lyric from a song, and given that you put song markers in your chat, I would assume that's correct. And I apologize, and I know you already know the problem. I'm not cool enough to know any of these song references, but I love you, and I appreciate you being here, friend. People who know the song are clapping right now.
I'm trying to fix my prescription. I wish I could give Matthew evidence of life. Oh, this is Weston Campbell. Created by God, but I only have one example of life coming about it, and it appears to be of natural origin. I need more than one to establish a probability. Fair.
True. And 10, another 10 from Weston. Thank you. It says, my dogs wear a body harness and tags. All other dogs wear a body harness and tags. In conclusion, all dogs, including mine, wear a body harness and tags. Soundness is important. Epistemology. That's actually a very good point. They do so much to try to say, here's a thing we observed. Can we walk it all the way back to something we don't observe? And it never really works.
Holy crap. I mean,
for all your prescriptions.
Yeah. $200 from Billy Sipes. That last call was painful. I hope Christopher does better. Also, Matt and Justin, I love and appreciate all they do. Thank you, and keep on doing it. Thank you. You just made the return and update my order free. So thanks.
And 200 again from Billy. That is humongous. Genuinely tired of these sorts of lazy arguments. God must exist because the universe exists is nothing. It is nothing. The universe can exist without God in this argument. It's lazy and ridiculous, and I'm so sick of hearing these arguments. And I'm with you, Billy, and I love that Matt did bring up the fact that even if we conceded that there's like a first cause or a prime mover, there's no good reason to assume it's a sentient being that loves you, but will also torture you forever. There could very well be a naturalistic phenomenon that caused it that's even more likely based on Occam's razor, needlessly multiplying entities to explain something that can be explained by less just is irrational.
Legally Mod. Can someone please explain to me philosophical word games? Could someone please explain to me philosophical word games could have any bearing on the origin or study of the universe? Okay. Here's the thing. When we're talking about investigating and exploring physical facts about reality, we can, should, and do, those of us who are trying to engage in sound epistemology, rely on empirical evidence. However, while Kant did publish his Critique of Pure Reason, if you create a syllogism that is valid in structure, then true premises necessarily lead to true conclusions. That's just the basics of logic. And so when it comes to propositional logic, if I were to make an argument that was demonstrably valid in structure, and I presented it with two premises that you accept, whether they're true or not, we'll wait. You must accept the conclusion, or you are by definition irrational. Whether or not they're true doesn't matter. What we know is, ideally, if the first premise is true and the second premise is true and the structure is valid, the conclusion must be true. And so if you accept these as true, whether they're true or not, then you must accept the conclusion. Otherwise, you are, in fact, irrational. You are in violation of the principles of reason. And so it is possible to say, here's this premise, you accept it. Here's this premise, you accept it. And those things necessarily mean you must accept this. The coolest version of that is something that I did earlier, and that is a reductio ad absurdum. And so you assume, for the sake of argument, premise A, and you assume, for the sake of argument, premise B, and then you show the conclusion that leads to, and then when they reject the conclusion, they are shown to be irrational, and they must then point to which of their premises is false. So it's like, premise 1, I witnessed a hearing. Premise 2, I witnessed a healing. Premise 2, that healing came from a God. Therefore, the Gospel of Matthew is reliable, is what they were trying to do. That's an invalid structure. But if you were to put that together in a reductio and show that their beliefs lead to a conflict, as we did with the beliefs about the Bible and science, philosophy isn't just navel-gazing crap. It is the foundation of every argument you will ever hear. It is the foundation of all science. It is deductive that leads to useful things in inductive arguments. So it's possible that there might be a philosophical argument that you don't have personal evidence for, but you must accept because you accept other things.
And $10 from Weston Campbell at Billy, who prior sent a super chat, says, I second your second $200 super chat. Maybe I'll call into Skeptalk and talk about my perpetual motion machine instead of winning awards and not having to work the rest of my life.
That would be nice.
As an engineer, I've got concerns about this machine.
I do too, but you know what? If you genuinely think you have a perpetual motion machine, don't tell anybody. Just come talk to me privately. And get the money. $100 from Gingy. Wow, Justin was king as a Haran, a hot guy.
I will say this: he had a hell of a beard, and that's all I can say about that. He was also a maniac that literally tortured individuals.
I'm gonna call them King has a hard on forever. Wow, Billy!
Holy shit,
Billy Snipes. Last one before YouTube nursed me. I 100% agree with Matt's perspective. They fear critical thinking because they fear a critical thinking populace, but that might be my tinfoil hat. Thank you for that. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's tinfoil. I try not to dig too far down the conspiracy road, but the reality is I don't think they have to work very hard to keep people from learning to think properly. To learn, it doesn't take much effort to get people to not focus on rational thought, because our desires, unless they're put in check, will frequently override our reasoning. It is an effort to learn. It's like I'm a diabetic. I'm a terrible diabetic that has to stop pounding these energy drinks. I know that. I've talked to my doctor about it. I have stopped ordering it. I should probably not be eating many of the things that I'm eating, but they taste good and it feels good. And sometimes my sugar gets low. And so I will use that as an excuse to eat more sugar than I should. I know all of this. There's no lie in my brain about the facts of all of this, but my desire overrides that. And we know we do that. And I can sit here and talk about it, and I know I'm going to do it again. I just hope that I can train myself to do it less so that I live longer. And I am kind of doing a better job most of the time. And the rest of it, I rely on the medicine to fix what's broken in my brain.
We got 10 from Johnny O. It says, for what it's worth, Abington School District versus Shemp. SCOTUS protected academic study of religion. What's left of SCOTUS case law, that is. Fuck SCOTUS, though. Have a good night. I agree with you. It wouldn't be that bad if they actually did teach all the religions academically, but you know they won't. They're going to say, here's these other religions that obviously are silly and not true, but then here's the Bible, and we can't talk bad about the Bible, and it's just indoctrination all over again.
That's the point. That's the point. A point that I meant to mention that I didn't. When I took a comparative religions course, my freshman year of high school, I think it was, I remember sitting there saying, wow, look at all these other religions that are really weird. It's a good thing I found the true one. That's what the comparative religions course essentially reinforced in me. If you're going to teach a Bible course in school, it needs to be taught from a scholarly, not liturgical or no preaching. Here's just what it says. And we don't need to teach what it says. We need to teach how to think. So when they read it and they read what it says, they can be like, wow, the earth didn't come before the sun, and be done before they get out of the first 5 fucking verses in the book. $20 from Craps Teacher or Craps.teacher. Hey, you and I need to hang out. For years, I never walked out of a casino with less money than I walked in, partially because I got lucky a couple of times. Well, I got lucky several times, but I'm a craps player, and I've taught some other people how to play, but it's been ages. Justice for Pharaoh. God set him up big time. Yeah. Hardened his heart. Pharaoh's like, I'll let your people go. Oh, hell no, I'm not done showing off. Sit back down.
And he lied to him. He had Moses tell him we're just going to go out in the desert for 3 days. That was a lie. You knew that was a lie. Anyway, Ken from Birdkeeper Mikey says, hey, sorry about that misunderstanding, I think, when you went away from the faith. Still thanks for what you all do, getting truth out there. For again, rock hard for Doug, gay for Justin, and gay for Matt. Well, thank you, Mikey. And don't be sorry. You're a member of this community, and we love and care about you, friend.
$20 from Lizzie Dog. Jesus showed up to me as a strippergram. He danced but didn't heal my chronic illness. Kind of pissed, yet turned on. Is this not enough proof for you? Was it King Hard-On that showed up? Or King Has a Hard-On that showed up? Yeah. I'm glad you at least got turned on. It's not a complete loss.
Was he hung? Everyone needs to know. And 100 from our friend Genji. Thank you so much, Genji. Says, this is for Arden. Thanks for producing. And yes, a big thanks to Arden.
Yeah. Don't worry. I'll make sure Arden gets that money and spends it on snakes. I'm kidding. $10 Canadian alleged money. By the way, there was a caller where I said I figured everybody knew I was joking, but I said something like, you're from Canada, so I'll speak slowly. And it's like, I love Canada. I did a 10-city tour of Canada. I mock the money. I say so. Anybody who thinks that I'm down on Canada or Canadians are actually seriously trying to mock them. I am genuinely sorry for giving you the wrong impression, and grow up. But I'm on garrison duty tonight and bored to tears, other than when a hissing goose chased me. Canada AF, eh? So yes, here's my repayment for entertaining me during my shift only 12 hours ago. Well, if you want to keep donating, Justin and I might be willing to stay here for, oh, nope, Arden is not willing to stay here. That was the final super chat. We have to end the show here. First of all, huge thank you to everybody for participating, for the great calls that we got, and for the not so great calls we got. Thanks again to Justin. Love doing the show with you, and anything else all the time. I'll get you on my lives on my channel. Patreon.com/calltheline to help support us there. Like and subscribe. Join the channel. You can go to linemerch.com. But the most important thing to do, look up the American Humanist Association and the Empathy Project and get involved if you can, and then come back and help us raise money for recovering from religion. Take care.